Hello friend, and how are you today? I hope the answer is well. I hope that you are doing better than well. I hope you are doing fantastic. Because this video will be coming out probably only a few days before the new year begins, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your kind comments. Thank you for everything. I would not be where I am today if it were not for you, for your feedback, for your love, for your support. It means literally the world to me. Today, I'm trying something new. I've never done this before, but what I am doing is I'm compiling several videos I've made into a sort of mini course, if you will. So I have hand selected some videos that I've made that are going to walk you through setting up the best Betta tank. Now, at the end of each video, I'm going to pop back in here and we're going to discuss a couple questions that you might have after watching the video, and we will discuss them briefly. We'll also be touching on 3 of the key topics of each video. So we're going to start with all the essentials that you need, and then I'll walk you through the tank, through the decor. We're going to talk about how to set up a sponge filter. We're going to talk about how to make your tank more natural, all the good stuff that you're going to need. And then we're going to end this course with 2 videos of me scaping the 2 tanks that I currently have. So my 7-gallon cube tank and my 6-gallon rimless rectangle tank. So you'll get to watch my whole entire setup. And by the way, before we get started, if you like what you see today, if you like this, if you find that this course is very helpful, let me know and I will make sure that I include more of these in the future videos that I roll out. Let's go ahead and hop into the first video. Hello friend, and welcome back to Betta Days. I'm so glad that you're joining me today because I'm going to be walking you through each thing you will need when setting up a Betta Fish tank. This is the exact formula that I follow every single time I set up a Betta Fish tank. This is going to get you started. It's going to make things really simple. Buying things for your Betta Fish tank just should not take a long time. It should not be hard. You should be able to know exactly what you need to get, buy it, wait for it to come in, and then set up your tank just how you want it. So let's go ahead and dive into exactly what you're going to need to make the best forever home for your fin friend. By the way, if you are new here and this is your first time, consider sticking around. Subscribing is free, and I have loads and loads of content that I think you are going to find very helpful, all about Betta fish. So if you want to become the best Betta fish keeper possible, you will want to stick around, trust me. Let's go ahead and hop into the first thing. What is a tank without the tank itself? You're going to need a tank. Tanks come in all kinds of shapes, sizes. They hold 5 gallons, 4 gallons, 6 gallons, 7 gallons, 10 gallons. There are so many different sizes. So what you need to do is go ahead and start with an idea of what you want. What size do you want? Do you want a long tank? Do you want a rectangle tank? Do you want a cube tank? Personally, I have really enjoyed having cube tanks for my desk. Cube tanks are really good for desk corners. If you have a corner, obviously a long rectangle isn't really going to work very well, or a long tank isn't going to work well. It's going to kind of crowd your actual working space. I work at my desk, so I need as much space on my desk as possible, but I still want my Betta to have enough space to swim around. So this is a 7-gallon cube tank. It's worked really well. Cubes are great for corners. Behind me, I do have kind of more of the standard rectangle size, just because it's taking up the whole entire bedside table that I have. So that is a 6-gallon. It's not quite as tall as this one, and it's not quite as deep. So therefore it can be a little bit longer, and that works really well. So you need to decide which size works best for you. I recommend having a minimum of 5 gallons. So a 5-gallon tank is the recommended minimum. Of course, you can go higher than this, but if you want to start out with the 5 and see where that leads you, by all means, go ahead. Once you have figured out exactly what size you need, now it's time to look for the tank. My favorite place to find tanks are Amazon, mostly, and sometimes Facebook Marketplace. I have had one good find from there, but most of my tanks have come from Amazon. Now, where you live, you may not have access to Amazon. If that is the case, I recommend just checking the best websites for you, or the best local listing sites. Maybe you have Craigslist. I don't know which region or which area you live in. but you can always check there for secondhand tanks. You can also just buy them brand new. These tanks, I love to buy the rimless tanks. They're really beautiful, but these you're going to probably find in more specialized pet stores or online on websites. Usually regular pet chain pet stores like Smart Pet Supplies plus Petco, they're not going to have tanks like this. If you want something like this, you might need to order it custom made. You might need to order it from a specialized website like Glass Aqua or something, or Boost Plant, or UNS, or UNC, or even Landon, but I buy mine from Amazon. So this tank was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think this tank was around $80, $85, which to me is a pretty good deal because they last forever and it looks beautiful. So this tank will last me a very long time. The one behind me was about the same. It was a little bit cheaper because it was smaller. So it was probably in the 75-ish, 70, 75, somewhere along that line. I like to get mine from Amazon. So go ahead and do a little bit of research, figure out which tank you want, what size you want, and how you want your tank to look. Now that you have your tank, it's time to build from the ground up. So you have to start with substrate. I have seen quite a few people make Betta Fish tanks with no substrate at all, and you don't want to do this. Every natural body of water has a floor. It has some sand, it has clay, it has dirt, it has wood, it has something. There's something on the base of every body of water in the world. Betta Fish's natural habitat is going to have something like dirt or clay on the ground or sand, something along that line. So what I love to do is I love to get planted substrate. So the brand that I love is Fluval, but there are many other brands out there. You can always do your research and just choose which one you love the best. Planted substrate is a little bit different from gravel. So gravel is just kind of rock. Planted substrate is made from dirt and clay. It's clay based from what I understand, and it has nutrients built into those pebbles, those compressed pebbles for your plants. So planted substrate is the best if you want live plants. And that's why I go with Fluval planted substrate for my tanks, because I love to plant my tanks. Now, once you decide on the substrate, you could also go with gravel if you want. Fluval planted substrate is just my favorite. But because it is so dirty and you can't rinse it off because it's clay based, I like to cap it. That means I just put a nice layer of another substrate over the top to kind of keep it down in the ground. This would almost be the equivalent of if you had a flower bed in your front yard, but you don't really like the look of the dirt. Maybe you cover that dirt with some straw, pine straw. Maybe you cover it with some rocks, make it look really pretty and artistic. That's essentially what I'm doing in my tank. So I buy a 5 to 6 pound bag of sand. I have a nice sand layer at the top. So you can see the planted substrate is at the bottom and the sand is at the top. This is really helpful for multiple reasons, but I really won't get into that right now. I have a video on the how to layer your substrate effectively. If you want to check that out, you can go do that. Again, my favorite place to buy the Fluval planted substrate in the sand is Amazon, but you can also find some really good sand on Etsy. I like to buy some of my supplies off of Etsy, and there are some really good plant sellers there as well, just a bit of a side note. So now you've chosen your tank and you've chosen your substrate. It's time to have some fun with decor. I have used resin structures in the past that were kind of shaped to look like wood. They weren't really wood, it was just kind of painted resin or plastic. And a couple of years ago, I decided to go with wood and rocks instead. And I'm so glad I made the switch. The wood, it's beautiful. It makes it so natural looking, as do the rocks, but I like the wood because it does slowly break down and it gives my snails and shrimp something to eat off of continuously. I never have to put an actual source of food in my tank. I've heard that people do that, but as of right now, I have not had to do that, and both are absolutely thriving. So I go with driftwood and I go with some nice rocks. I've tried a couple of different rocks so far. I have tried the white elephant skin stone. I have also tried I believe this is called dragonstone. It should be called dragonstone. I got this off of Etsy as well. So this one's more jagged, has some more holes in it, nice place you can stick some plants if you want. It's also more of an orangey undertone. The white elephant skin stone I have in the one behind me. It's whiter, lighter, brighter. It just depends on what you want. I like them both and I like the variation that they give. So neither one of my tanks look the same. So I like to vary it up a little bit. The wood I always buy off of Amazon. I never know exactly what I'm going to get, but I usually buy the 3-packs, and I believe it is the 3 to 7 inch long. They give you kind of a range where it could be this long, it could be that long. I never know what I'm going to get, but it has always worked out pretty well for me. I will leave a link to all of these things mentioned, by the way, all the things that I actually have and I've bought. I'll leave links for you, so you don't have to go searching for that. And even if it's not exactly what you want, you can kind of use that to base your search for whatever else you want to get for your tank. So once I get the rocks and I get the wood and I have the substrate layer all set up, I just arrange the rocks and wood how I want it. I like to create a nice little center, a little focal point for my tank. And I also try to fashion them in a way where they're not right up against the glass, because, a little bit of a side note / tip, if you set up the wood and the rocks too close to your glass, that's going to make it really hard for you to clean the glass later on. Really hard. So make sure you kind of congregate all that stuff in the middle, or at least away from the side. There needs to be a pretty good size gap between the wood rocks and the glass. That way you can get in there with your little sponge, razor, whatever you use, and clean it. Once that's done, once I pick my wood and my rocks, now it's time to have fun and decide on which plants I'm getting. Now, I last bought my plants from Boost. They have a really good selection. They had super fast shipping. They did really well. There are many places you could buy aquatic plants from. You could also, honestly, if you know any fish keepers in your area, you could ask them to just give you some plants and they would give it to you. So there are really so many different resources and different places you could get plants from. I recommend watching my video on the best beginner plants. I do have that as well. You can check that out. I go through some of my favorite plants so that I won't have to list that in today's video, but you need some plants. Decide on which ones you want to get. A little bit of a side note, background plants are the plants that are going to grow tall. You want to put those in the background of your tank, because if you put them in the foreground, they're going to grow so big you won't be able to see your tank. Middle ground plants, those are kind of like the plants I have here in the middle of my tank. So they grow max about this high, so not super high, but medium. And then you have the foreground plants. Those are these smaller plants, like the smaller cryptocoryne and the bucephalandra or the Anubis nana. They don't grow very big, they stay small, so they're the best plants to put right up front, because they will never grow so big that they will block out your beautiful view and the beautiful creation you've just made. After that, you want to make sure that you have all of the supplies. If this is your first tank, then you are also going to need to buy you some supplies to kind of take care of it. So, moving on, equipment. Really, the only 3 bits of electronic equipment you need are filter, heater, light. I buy all 3, go figures, from Amazon, but you can buy them in many other places if you don't have access to Amazon. My favorite filter, bar none, sponge filter. I will always say the sponge filter is my favorite. It is quiet. It's not absolutely quiet. You're gonna still hear a little bit of a hum from the air pump, but it's so much better. It's never been problematic. I've never had to damage my Betta fins. It is easy. It's just great. I can't say enough about it. Sponge filter is the way to go. Plus, there is no reoccurring expense. With different filters like hang-on back filters, you usually have to buy these little cartridges that you put in and replace every month. Or if you really like hang-on back filters, you can buy some thick filter medium, cut you a little square and stick it in there, and then just, you don't have to replace it. So that is one way you can save money. But I still heard some fish keepers have problems with the hang-on back filter, especially when their Betta somehow finds a way to jump up and into it. That's always a possibility. So with the sponge filter, super easy. So for that, I need the sponge, actual sponge end, I need the airline tubing, and I need the pump. I have made a video on how to set up a sponge filter. If you would like to watch that, I will also leave a link. Next, you need a heater. When you're choosing a heater, make sure you check the recommended size for that wattage, because you don't want to get a heater that is meant for a smaller tank. It won't heat up your tank well enough. And if you get one that is for a tank that is way too small for the recommended size, it could overheat your tank. It could just be very problematic. So my favorite heater is the Hygger. It's about this big. I have it in that one. I do have a Hygger brand one in here, but it was the older one that I got, and the one in the tank behind me is actually smaller, so it's easier to hide. I prefer smaller heaters. in size. And then you want a light. This light, exact light, is actually Aqua brand. So Aqua, I believe, is a sister brand to Hygger. I don't know, it seems like they're related. I could be wrong. But yes, they have good lights. This light I love because it's a lot like a book light. It's very flexible. You can move it back and forth. As you can see, I've actually placed this one on the side so that I can hide it with my plant here, and it really leaves that little bit open there. It also gives my tank a lot of height, a lot of elevation. I love it. I use this same exact one behind me, so that's a good one. Once you've decided on all of that, you are going to need 2 products for the water. Number 1, you need dechlorinator. I buy Seachem Prime dechlorinator for mine. You don't have to buy that exact brand, but that's just the brand I like. Most fish keepers use that brand as well. It's trusted, it's easy, simple. A lot of people like it. Then you're going to need a freshwater master test kit, and it needs to be the liquid test kit. It can be a little bit more costly up front than something like the strips, but it's going to be more accurate and it's going to be easier to tell what your water levels are. Just get the master test kit. After you got that, you might want to get a couple of tools to help you with cleaning. Right now, I prefer this razor blade that is on a really long handle so I don't get my hands wet. I use it to just scrape the inside of the glass down really easy. It's great for tough bits of algae that don't want to come off with the basic sponge. Then I have a sponge that's on a stick, and a lot of times I will only use that because the inside of my glass doesn't get that dirty. So I'll just go back and forth, up and down, all the way around before I siphon the water out for. If you have live plants and some of them don't root into the actual planted substrate that you have, they feed more from the water column. Plants that do that are going to be like the Bucephalangia and the Nubus and the Java Fern. You will need to get a liquid fertilizer. I recommend Easy Green. Easy Green fertilizer by Aquarium Co-op. It has done really well. My tanks have been very happy, and I have not had a problem with them. I've been using them for probably about 4 years now. 2 other tools I have found very handy when aquascaping and doing some general cleaning in my tank are number 1, these scaping scissors, and number 2, these scaping tweezers. These are scissors and tweezers, but they're built really long. That way you really don't have to get your hand down in the water. The tweezers are excellent for moving things around. I use them to smooth out the sand once I'm done siphoning it. I use it to grab out plants that may have loosened. I use it to wedge plants back down into my rocks and wood. And I use the scissors to cut off dead or dying leaves from my plants. Super duper helpful. It gets down in there. Again, I don't have to get my hands wet. Although my hands always end up wet for some reason when I do tank maintenance, but that's besides the point. Those 2 tools are amazing and I absolutely love them. So really, that's all you need to set up a tank in and of itself. There are still a few other things that I like to get for my Betta, but they're not exactly tank related. They're more health care and food related. So this is everything you need to build a nice and thriving aquarium for your betta fish. If you want to see me set up some tanks, you will see my exact process, and it's just a really fun watch. You can go watch the most recent one I did of the Tankscape behind me. I will link that as well, so you can go check that out. And then if you will go to my channel and you can search 7-gallon cube tank setup, this one should pop up as well. I set this one up a little while ago. It's been 5 or 6 months at the time of filming this, but that's also a good watch. For both of these, I followed the exact formula that I just walked you through, building from the ground up and all the supplies and everything. So you will be able to see me in action doing all of that. I hope that this video blessed you and gave you some inspiration. Head to the comments, especially if you are an experienced fish keeper and perhaps you're not setting up your first tank. Maybe you have set up a few other tanks and you have a little more wisdom to share with the rest of us. I would greatly appreciate that, and I'm sure everyone else would. I'm back. Did you find that video helpful? I hope so. Let's go over really quickly the 3 key points to remember from this video. Number 1, choose your tank. Make sure it fits what you want, what you're looking for, and make sure it will hold at least 5 gallons. That is the recommended minimum for betta fish. Number 2, build from the ground up. So you'll want to start with your substrate, then your decor like wood, and then you put in your plants. Then you get your equipment in there and your plants in there. Very important to start with substrate and then build all the elements on top of that. It'll just keep you from being confused and it will keep you from wasting time. 3, make sure you finish with the essentials. Essentials would be the filter and the heater and the light. The light's going to help keep your plants and everything alive and healthy. The filter's going to help host beneficial bacteria, especially if it's sponge filter, and it will help to keep the water flowing a little bit. Also, you'll need a heater because bettas are tropical fish and they do the best in warm water. Now let's move on to a couple questions that may have arisen during this video. When can I add my betta? Once you set up your tank, you want to make sure it has had time to cycle. Now the cycling period will usually take 2 to 3 weeks. It took about 2 for me, and that's basically just allowing the beneficial bacteria to colonize in your tank. The beneficial bacteria is what is going to turn any harmful levels such as the nitrites and the ammonia. It's going to turn those into nitrates that then, if you have live plants in the tank, they will filter that out. So you really need that colony because that's going to keep your fish from dying and being really sick, essentially. That's just the summarized version of cycling your tank. Typically, after you set up your tank, it will take up to a month. For me, it's usually 2 to 3 weeks, but I like to seed my aquarium a little bit. We can talk about seeding the tank later. If you don't know how to cycle the tank or how to quick start your tank, I do have a video on that and I can link it for you here. Exactly what heater wattage and temperature should I use for my tank size? In order to quickly answer that, you are going to know how big your tank is. So if it's 5 gallons or if it's 6 or 7 gallons, you can just quickly go online, go into the listing of the heater you're looking for, and then when you have the heater selected, in the description, it will tell you the recommended tank size. So it'll say it can heat 3 to 5 gallons or 5 to 10 gallons, and it'll tell you. It's a very straightforward way to know just what size and what wattage heater you should get. And the last question is, which sponge filter setup should I buy and how do I keep the flow gentle? So later on in this course, we are going to go over setting up a sponge filter. It is my most recommended filter to have for your fish tank. Sponge filters, I've always had great success with them. They are very easy to control the flow. Again, I will show you how to control the airflow in your sponge filter if you should get that for your tank. I always recommend that over anything else, so we will be discussing that later in the course. All right, now that we have discussed the main points of the last video and addressed any questions that may have come up, let's move on to the next video. Layering substrate is really, really cool, and I would know because I've done it in both of my tanks. I'm obsessed and I'm never going back. But there are some tips and tricks I've learned along the way, and I want to share them with you so that you don't accidentally make any of the same mistakes that I made, and so that you can get nice, clean, perfect layers on the first try. So let's go ahead and hop into it. But before I go into any of the actual points, I do want to mention, just in case you don't know what layering substrate is, generally layering substrate has to do with planted substrate. So when you get a planted substrate like fluval stratum, it's very dark, it's usually clay or dirt based, it's very dirty, very powdery, very dark. But it's super duper beneficial to any rooted plants that you have in your tank. It keeps them healthy for a long time and they love it. But because it's really dark and really dirty, if you like a nice bright tank, then you will want to cap it with some lighter substrate, namely sand. I have capped both of mine in my tank with a nice white layer of sand. I'll have that linked in the description for you, and it has worked like a charm. It makes my tank look really nice. I can still have the planted substrate for my rooted plants, but I don't have to worry about kicking up any dust or dirt, and it's just really up-leveled my tank, so that's all I can say. And I honestly think that the results speak for themselves. Let's go ahead and get into the tips on how to maintain and keep a perfect layered substrate. First of all, you don't need to wash your planted substrate. When you first setting up your tank, usually you want to wash your substrate and get it all nice and washed. And for the sand, you do, and it is really beneficial to wash the sand for your tank. That's going to go on the top layer. But as far as the planted substrate goes, rinsing it is going to do absolutely nothing. And I would know because I've done it a few times. For some reason, I was thinking it was a lot like gravel or sand, where when you rinse it, it just gets rid of that dust and debris on the surface and that's it. Because planted substrate is made up of clay and dirt and such, rinsing it is like rinsing dirt from your backyard. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to keep being muddy and muddy and muddy and muddy until all the dirt is gone. So you don't need to rinse it because it's not going to do anything. So go ahead and pour that right into your tank, just like I did with my most recent tank, Scape, which, by the way, you can watch up here if you want to see that in action. I do just realize that I mentioned rinsing your sand, but I totally forgot I did not do that for this tank when I set it up. I actually just poured it in dry because it allowed me to really smooth it out and make a nice clean layer. So when you're first setting up your tank, you actually don't have to rinse either. It does make the setup easier. I did that for this tank, but it ended up just being better to just pour it in straight. When I said rinsing it, I was remembering when I refreshed the layer of this substrate, which is something you can do. After a while, it will turn darker. So if you want to keep it nice and bright, you can buy extra sand, put some in a cup, rinse it out, and then scoop as much as you're comfortable with, scoop it off, scoop that dirty layer of sand off, and then sprinkle fresh over it. You would not believe how much brighter it makes your tank. Now that's going to come down the road, so you don't have to worry about that at all. It just bothered me, and I had this for about 5 months, and so a couple of weeks ago I just put a fresh layer of sand over it. Once you have a nicely established tank that's clear and you don't want any sand, dust, or anything getting in there with your fish, then you would want to rinse it. But when you're first setting up your tank, you can just pour it in and get that nice layer, and you don't have to worry about dust or anything. It'll settle, and then once you clean the tank a couple of times as it's cycling and before you put your fish in there, then it will work just fine. Number 2, when layering, and I didn't do this before with this tank, I did it for this tank, but when layering, you need a thick layer of sand on top of that planted substrate. It needs to be thick. It needs to be probably about at least an inch thick of the sand alone. 1.5 to 2 would also be beneficial. Usually, for some reason, I build a slope a little bit, so there's more sand in the back than I have in the front. So whether or not you build a slope or keep it flat, that's up to you. But make sure the lowest point is still at least an inch thick. Maybe a little more if you want to go overboard. Now, why is this important, you may be wondering? Well, when you are performing water changes throughout the life cycle of your tank, that sand is going to get disturbed a little bit. Some of it's going to move, especially as you siphon it, and then once you're done with tank maintenance, you just scrape it flat. You can use a flattening tool, whatever. But as you pour new water in and you perform water changes, it's going to get a little bit messed up. The problem with that, if you have a thin layer, is that it's going to disturb it so much that that planted substrate is going to start rising to the surface. And then what's going to happen is, instead of a nice clean layer, you're going to start having pebbles of the planted substrate pop up from time to time as you're siphoning. And that's what I've had happen with this tank. It's not my favorite. I really don't like it. So to keep that from happening, you need a nice buffer so that if something happens, and maybe if you pour water in a little too fast and it creates a little bit of a crater, or if you accidentally move a little too much of the sand, then it doesn't expose that planted substrate to then start mixing in. That's why you really need a nice thick layer, and I will make sure I do that from now on. Number 3, when siphoning the sand, your main goal is to get poop off of it and leaves. Now, because you are using sand, since it is a layered substrate, you don't have to jab that siphon down deep in there like you would if you were using gravel, because sand really doesn't have any crevices. It's pretty much one nice, smooth, flat layer. So all that poop and waste and all that is just pretty much floating just on the surface of that substrate. So all you really have to do is get your siphon a little bit over it and hover over it. It's okay if it sort of sucks up some of the sand, because the sand is heavier, it's still going to float back down and the waste is going to get sucked up. But you never want to jab it way down in there to where you're about an inch down into the substrate. It's going to mess up your clean layer. All you have to do is just gently hover it over the substrate and you'll get all of the waste out, no problem. It's super duper easy, simple, but something that not everyone knows about, so sometimes that'll mess up their beautiful layer. Number 4, when performing a water change, make sure that you pour that water in slowly. One of my favorite methods is to actually take the pot I have of fresh water, elevate it a bit on my legs so that the water is higher than the water in my tank. Take the hose from my siphon, stick one end down into the pot, suck on it with my mouth, and then stick that hose down into the tank. That way it creates a flow of fresh water from the pot down into the tank that I'm now filling up because I took some of that water out for a water change, essentially. That is better than carrying the pot and pouring it down into there. When you have a strong current that is typically going to come from if you just pour a bunch of water in there, it's gonna mess that tank layer. It's gonna mess up that. I'm so just mentally distressed right now thinking about it. I can't even get the words out. So any way you can find to make sure that it's pouring slowly. A really good tip is to actually pour water on top of some wood or rocks that you have in there. For example, instead of pouring it directly here, I would maybe take the whatever that's flowing the water out, pour it over to where it's actually pouring on top of this wood. That's just going to help break up the current and keep it from messing up that sand layer. Anything you can do to make sure you don't mess up that sand layer, that is priority. Now, it may make it sound kind of tedious and hard to do, but I promise, layered substrate is really, really easy. Once you know these tips and you make sure you don't mess it up, so then you don't have to go over and start again, or you're just stuck with ugly mixed up substrate. Once you get the hang of it and you figure it out, it's super, super easy. It was not hard to learn how to do it at all. For most of my life, I've just been doing a basic gravel on my tanks, and I liked it okay, but this is so beautiful. It feeds my plants, it looks natural, it's bright because of the sand layer. It's a win-win all around. So if you try it, let me know what you think. I love it. I'm never going back. It is my absolute favorite. Now you know how to layer aquarium substrate. Really quickly, just in case you were wondering, do I even need to layer my substrate? I mentioned this in the video, but you don't have to. If you want to just begin with gravel, then go for it. However, I love to layer substrate because on the bottom layer will be the substrate that has a lot of nutrients. This is going to feed all of the plants in your fish tank. So if you don't want to start with live plants, or if you want to start with a few plants like Anubis or Java Fern that can feed off of fertilizers in the actual water column, so you could get like a liquid fertilizer, then you don't have to have planted substrate. Planted substrate is really for those plants that are going to root down in the substrate, but it's my personal favorite, and it allows me to get a lot of different kinds of plants because many of the plants do need to root and do need planted substrate. The only few that I have found that do really well with just liquid fertilizer in the water are Java Fern, Anubis, Bucephalandra. Those have done really well. Sometimes the Amazon sword does all right, but it does also like to dig down and it really likes the planted substrate as well. So you get to decide. Once your tank is set up, you're probably not going to want to redo it. So make sure you think about what you're really going to want in the future and then set up your Betta tank accordingly. The 3 main points of this video are: number 1, make sure you layer that substrate thick enough. It needs to be thick, especially the top layer. Otherwise, that bottom layer is going to start coming up as you siphon the substrate and clean your tank periodically. Number 2, gentle maintenance really saves those layers. So when you're removing water, when you're cleaning up your tank, if you take out water and you're pouring stuff back in, make sure you don't do it really rough. Otherwise, that water is going to blow back all the sand and it's going to mix up your substrate layers, which does not look pretty, and trust me, you don't want that. And last but not least, a clean layer is very important. So once you put the planted substrate in, smooth it out. If you want it to have a slope in the back, just go ahead and fix that with your hand or with an aquascaping tool, whatever you want to use, and then gently pour on the sand on the top. And then level it with your hand. Again, you will see me do this exact thing later in both of my tank scaping videos. I will show you how I did that, and you can watch me layer it and you can see how I did all of that. Here are 3 questions that you may have had, and let's go ahead and answer those really quick. Number 1, how much substrate and sand do I need for my tank size? I, so far, have pretty much just eyeballed it, but I'll tell you what I've done for these 2 tanks. The square tank, because the cube tank that's 7 gallons, it's probably about 12 inches. So it's about 12 by 12 on the bottom. I didn't need quite as much to build it up, but I still used some old gravel to build up a slope because I wanted a slope. If I was just going flat, I probably used about 8 pounds of the planted substrate, and then on the top I used roughly 5 to 6 pounds of the sand. Now I feel like I should have gotten more, so what I always recommend doing is buying more than what you think you'll need, because number 1, it's nice to have some on hand, and number 2, if you miscalculated, then you have a little bit of wiggle room. So I would personally go for now the 10-pound bag of sand. By the way, I will link all the supplies that I used as well, so that'll be in the description. But I would recommend the 10-pound bag of sand, and I would recommend 8 to 12 pounds of that planted substrate. Question number 2, can I layer substrate in an already established tank without stressing my betta? And the quick answer to that is no. Fluval substrate is incredibly messy. This is something you have to do from day one when you set up that tank. If for some reason you were wanting to layer the substrate in your tank because visually, let's say you started out with substrate that was kind of ugly, maybe you don't like the gravel or whatever you had in there, you can put some sand or something on the top to just make it look prettier and more aesthetic. But as far as layering planted substrate in the sand, you have to do that from day one because planted substrate is very dusty and you cannot rinse it off. You have to do it from day one. You can't take an already established tank and then make that whole setup. It's just not going to work. And number 3, what's the best way to fix mixed or messy layers if I already mess it up? So this hasn't really happened to me, but let's say, something happens and now the layers are all mixed up and they look kind of, probably at this point, the only thing that you could do is scoop a little bit of it off the top and put down some fresh sand to kind of cover it up. It may not be a super permanent fix because now that the layers are a little messed up, you may get some pellets of the planted substrate that will kind of pop up above the surface sometimes, especially as you siphon it to clean. But it's the easiest way to go ahead and fix it visually. If it doesn't bother you visually and having some of those little brown pellets mixed in with the sand on the surface doesn't bother you, just leave it. Just leave it. You don't have to fix it unless it absolutely just bothers you visually. Now that we have gone over that, we are now going to talk about the best beginner plants to put in your bedded tank. Since you have the tank chosen and you know how to set up the substrate, we will talk about the plants. So these are the best beginner plants that you can have in your betta tank. Hello friend, welcome to Betta Days. Today we're going to be covering a very fun and interesting topic, the best beginner plants for your betta fish tank, or really any freshwater tank. A lot of these I started out with personally and I had a really good experience with them. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to be listing each plant and then we're going to be listing their requirements, how you need to plant them in your tank, and so forth. I also have an idea for a future video that I would love to make. I want to cover some specifics on how to plant a tank, basically aquascaping tips, if you will, because a lot of people seem to struggle with it. I'm not sure why. And then I realized one day I have acquired quite a few tips over the years that I would love to share. So if you would like a video on that, let me know in the comments. All right, let's go ahead and hop right into it. The first plant is probably everyone's favorite and one that you will always hear recommended, the Anubis. These plants are crazy hardy, they don't have very many requirements, and I would say that it was the first plant I ever started out with. I specifically remember walking into PetSmart and coming out with an Anubis, a pretty big one, in one of the cubes. They are really great plants, and there are a bunch of different kinds. Some grow smaller, some grow larger. There are so many different types, I won't list them all here, but thankfully all of the requirements are the same. Their lighting needs are low to moderate. They thrive in low light setups, which make them perfect for beginners. You can seriously place it in any dark corner of your betta tank, although they do seem to do well with light, and they'll do well just fine. I recently saw a post on a Facebook page that somebody made, and they were talking about how they had ordered some of these plants in the mail. It had been lost for over a month, and when it finally showed up at their door, these plants were totally fine. Totally fine and healthy. For fertilizer, they will do fine with occasional adding of liquid fertilizer, and I use Easy Green by Aquarium Co-op, but you could probably use honestly any fertilizer. Easy Green just happens to be the only one I have used up to now, and I do love it. How to plant the Anubis. Do not bury the rhizome, the thick horizontal stem, with the roots in the substrate. Do not bury your Anubis. It does not want to be buried. It will rot if you do that. Instead, make sure that you attach it to driftwood rocks or any decoration. To do so, you can use aquarium safe glue, you can use a thread. I like to, if I want to attach it to, say, rocks or wood especially, I'll take a little bit of thread and just kind of wrap it around that wood and secure it so that it has some time to root or wrap around that wood or attached to the rock, and after that I just cut and get rid of the thread. That is one of my favorite ways to anchor it. I will be going more in depth on how I anchor and plant things in the later video that I want to make that I mentioned earlier. These plants are great because they're hardy, they're slow growing, and bettas love resting on the broad leaves. Now, like I said before, there are some miniature versions of this plant, but for the most part, the leaves are really broad and they do make great betta resting spots. The next plant is a Java fern. These are really bushy. They can grow long, tall leaves. They can grow shorter, bushier leaves, just like the Anubis. There is a pretty great variety of Java fern plants, but again, they all have the same requirements. For lighting, it's low to moderate. Avoid intense light because it can cause algae growth. For fertilizer, not a whole lot is required, really. You don't have to have any, but if you're dosing liquid fertilizer anyway, they will like that just the same. And just like the Anubis, just place it in the tank, anywhere in the tank. Don't bury the roots, don't bury the rhizome. You can wedge it in between rocks, you can wedge it in between wood. It's fine, that's all you have to do. Super duper easy. Amazon sword. I love Amazon swords. The first one I ever got is actually in the 5-gallon behind me. It is my favorite. I love the large broad leaves. It is a wonderful way to create a background, a natural background for your betta tank, as they will just branch out and pretty much just cover the entire background. So they are a background plant. The lighting needs are moderate to high. It needs a decent light to thrive, so you're going to want to get a full spectrum aquarium light. You can get one on Amazon for relatively cheap, around $18 to $25, and they will do just fine. For fertilizer, root tabs are recommended, or a planted substrate, because you do need to plant these plants in the substrate. The roots do actually need to go into the substrate. They are root feeders. So plant the roots in the substrate, leave the crown where the leaves meet the roots above the surface, and it will thrive. In this tank, I have a planted substrate, so for the time being, I don't have to worry about adding root tabs. But if you just have regular gravel, get you some root tabs. I really like the Seachem root tabs. I'll put a picture of them here because I, for the life of me, can't remember what they're called, but I do love them. I used them in my old tank when I only had gravel, and they worked really well. Java moss. This plant is really, really flexible. You could put it anywhere. You can attach it to your wood and it will grow on the wood. It will create a carpet. You can place it on the bottom of your tank, it'll create a carpet. You could spread it over a rock and create a soft resting place for your betta. You could put this thing anywhere. I had it in my last tank in the 10-gallon. I attached it to the wood I had in there and it just grew. It just went crazy. For fertilizer, it's very minimal. It really doesn't require any, but it will do well with liquid fertilizer since you aren't actually planting it in the substrate. It doesn't need to be planted. Just throw it anywhere you want. You can leave it floating or attach it to rocks. You do not need to bury it in any way into the substrate. Cryptocoryne, another wonderful plant. A lot of people just call them crypts. I have one in my 5-gallon and it is loving the planted substrate, but again, if you just have gravel in your tank, you can get you some root tabs. For these, the lighting needs are low to moderate. They are very, very slow growing and hardy plants, so don't expect a whole lot of growth from these. Just like with the Anubis, they just don't grow very quickly, but they do stay really pretty. To plant, just stick the roots in the substrate, leave the crown with the leaves above the substrate, just like you would for the Amazon sword, and make sure you have some kind of fertilizer underneath the roots, whether it's root tab or you have a planted substrate. Water wisteria. This is probably the 3rd or 4th plant that I ever got. I had just a bunch of it gifted to me and it did really, really well. For this plant, the lighting needs are moderate to high. The fertilizer, it will benefit from either liquid fertilizer or root tabs. Why? Because it can either be left floating in the water or it can be buried because it does grow roots. So if you bury it, you're going to want a planted substrate or root tabs, or if you want to leave it floating, it will do just fine with liquid fertilizer. This plant is really great because it grows really quickly. The leaves are very unique and add a lot of interest to the tank, and it's really good for absorbing extra nutrients in the water, which helps to prevent a lot of algae growth. Hornwort. I loved this plant for a long time, but now I have mixed feelings because I got one that died and the needles of this plant went everywhere. Think of a pine tree. It's very similar in that if it dies or part of it dies, it will release those needles everywhere and they will be all over your tank. So if you're going for a more messy, natural kind of tank look, you're probably going to love it. But if you don't like that and you don't like cleaning up a bunch of needles, you may not want this plant. But I wanted to leave it in here because it is a great beginner plant. It is kind of hard to kill this thing, and I loved it for quite a while. It's great, adds a lot of places for your betta to hide, and overall it's okay. I just didn't like the needles, so I stopped keeping it in my tank. The lighting needs are moderate to high. It grows faster with more light. The fertilizer is minimal. It just absorbs the nutrients directly from the water. To plant it, you can either leave it floating or you can anchor it in directly into the substrate. If you do this, bury just a part of the stem into the substrate and make sure it's either planted or you have some root tabs in there. Duckweed. This plant, it's a floating plant, and it is great for beginners because it's very hard to kill it, but once you have it in your tank, unless you completely rip out the tank and redo everything, it's going to be in the tank forever. You cannot get it out, so do your research. If you really want it in your tank, great, you can get it. But for me, it became annoying after a while. I didn't like reaching in and doing water changes and having it all over my arms, all over my equipment. So you may not want this plant. If you happen to want it, then go for it. It's really easy. Anacharis. I love this plant. I had it in the tank that I got rid of, and it grew really, really well. It grew pretty quickly, and it's just a beautiful and unique looking plant. The lighting needs are moderate to high. It benefits from liquid fertilizer, and it can either be left in the substrate or floating. It's great because it's fast growing and it helps to absorb the excess nutrients, keeping the tank clean, much like the hornwort and the water wisteria. And last but not least, Bus or Bucephalandra. Similar to the Java fern and the Anubis, it does not want to have its roots buried, so make sure you anchor it to a rock or wedge it into some wood. It does best with liquid fertilizer and low to moderate lighting. And that's really all you need to know about that plant. It's really pretty. It is on the more expensive side, and it's going to be harder to find in local pet stores. I guess maybe it's more of a rare plant, but it's still pretty affordable if you ask me. I really enjoy having them in my tanks. So if you want them, check out some online plant shops and you should be able to find some. But you can easily start with the Anubis or Java fern and you're going to have a similar experience. They just look a little bit different. Now, here are a couple beginner tips just to get you started. Number one, lighting. Most beginner plants will thrive in low to moderate lighting. Avoid overly intense lights as they can promote algae growth. And again, the best light to get for your plants are full spectrum lights. You can look them up on Amazon. There are so many available. And really you need these because normal regular LED, the lights that you get with the tank, if it comes with the tank, they're not going to cut it. They don't mimic the natural sunlight that your plants are going to need, so that's why you need full spectrum. Fertilizer. Use liquid fertilizers for the water column feeders and root taps for the root feeders. Start with minimal fertilization and adjust based on plant growth. You don't have to be super obsessive about how or when you fertilize. Read the instructions on the package and then just kind of go with that. With the root tabs, you bury it and they will usually last for a few months. And with the liquid fertilizers, you would either add it to your tank once you complete a water change, or if you go for a while without a water change, you would just establish if you do a weekly or bi-weekly refertilization. It's really quite flexible, so it's entirely up to you how you do this. Just make sure you don't add too much at one time, and I think you can kind of gauge how much too much would be, because you will get a lot of algae in your tank if you do that. With CO2, none of these plants need CO2. That's why they're really super easy and wonderful beginner plants. I have never had CO2 in my tanks. I like to keep my tanks low tech. That's kind of the lingo we use for tanks that don't have a lot of extra things added to it. It's pretty much just substrate, water, heater, filter, and plants. That's a low tech tank. So if you've never heard that term before, now you know. For tank maintenance, regularly trim your plants to prevent overgrowth and remove any decaying leaves or plant matter to maintain a good water quality. Your snails will eat any dead or dying plant matter, but depending on the plants you have, you may have an excessive amount in the beginning. When you first put the plants in your tank, just remember that plant melting can happen, and melting is where your plants are getting used to the parameters in your tank, because wherever they were before, the parameters were a little different. So the leaves that they had may melt and die, but don't worry, because new leaves will grow from the roots and the rhizome of those plants, and they will be healthy and perfectly fine. I have noticed that it is helpful if you buy the plants from your area. So where I live, if I buy plants from someone in my state or in my area, the water conditions are going to be very, very similar, especially if you're using tap water. So if you do that, then the likelihood of plant melting is much lower. Just keep that in mind. Now you know the best beginner plants for your Betta tank. I'm so glad that you have decided to start keeping plants in your Betta tank, whether you're switching from plastic or you're actually just beginning your journey and you've decided to start off strong. I'm so glad that you've decided to do this. Planted tanks are always the best for bettas because they mimic a natural habitat. It's more gentle on betta fins, so it's going to prevent rips, and overall it's just the best. It's beautiful. I can't say enough about live plants. In this video, you learned the best beginner plants for your Betta tank. That is a mouthful. Try saying that fast. That's a mouthful. So you learned that. Now let's just go over a couple quick questions that maybe you still have. Number one, which of these plants are safest for a Betta with delicate fins, and which should I avoid? The easy answer is none of them are harmful to your Betta because they're all live plants. They're soft, they're not going to damage your Betta fins. All live plants that are aquatic and that are safe for fish are safe for your Betta. There will never be a live plant that has leaves or anything that's too hard on your Betta's fins. That's one of the main reasons I love live plants. I mean, what's not to love about live plants, but mainly they are not going to hurt your Betta's fins, so that's what's so great about them. Question number two, how do I know if a plant is a root feeder or a water column feeder when I'm shopping? Google. Honestly, straightforward, just Google it. Just Google it. Or if you have like a AI app or something like ChatGPT, you could just ask it. Type in the name of the plant. Hey, does a Java fern need its roots buried? Or will it feed from the water column? Will a liquid fertilizer be okay with it? You can get an answer to your question doing that in easily, I would say, a minute. Under 2 minutes at least. So that would be the best way to find out. My plants are melting or getting algae on them. What should I change first? Light fertilizer or maintenance? Well, first of all, if you got your live plant recently, it could just be melting back a little bit. Sometimes live plants will do that, especially if they were grown under the water already. When you put them in your tank, the water parameters are likely going to be very different. So some of the leaves will melt back a little bit and the new ones will grow and they'll be strong. So just let the plant do its thing if that is the case. If you think that maybe your plant is dying because it doesn't have enough fertilizer, you can buy some fertilizer, but I'm telling you, if you start out with this planted substrate, if you layer and you have the planted substrate and then you have some fertilizer in the water, then your plant should be completely fine. There should not be any need for more nutrients. If they have algae, usually algae is a sign of excess nutrients, or in my experience, most of the time it's been that my tanks were getting too much light. So the tank I have on my desk is right by a window, and every time the sun sets during the day, that sun shines right through it. So if at the same time I have that going, and then throughout the day, I've already had the tank light on for 6 hours or so and it was kind of bright. And then if I also let the sun go through it for about an hour full blast, well, my plants are going to get a lot more algae on them. That's just what happens. So what you could try is dial back, if your tank isn't near a window, dial back the amount of hours that you have your light on. Usually I find that 6 hours is the sweet spot. I usually follow the sun's pattern for this. I have found though that on for 6 hours is usually the best. But if you find that the sun will set through your tank, if you have shades, just pull them shut during maybe the hour that the sun's going to be shining through your tank. Just pull the shade, and you can always raise it afterwards once the sun isn't directly on it, but I found that that helps the most. Okay, now it's time for the next module, which is how to set up a sponge filter. This is going to be a good one. Setting up a sponge filter is very easy, very straightforward. You're going to love this. So let's get into it and I will see you after. I absolutely love sponge filters. Hands down, they are my favorite. If you don't have a sponge filter in your Betta tank, get one, please. Even if you have to take out the old filter media, set it next to this filter to get it going. If your tank is cycled and you already have a Betta, you can totally do that. Do it. There have been so many instances where honestly other filters like hang-on back filters have been even dangerous. Not just inconvenient, but actually dangerous. My friend literally this last week, her Betta disappeared and I told her, do you have a hang-on back filter? You need to check it. She said, I do. I said, check the hang-on back filter right now. She checked it and he was in it. He was in the little chamber of the hang-on back filter. So I'm not saying this to make you scared or anything, but sponge filters are literally the best. And if you're on this video, it's highly likely that you're here because you want to set one up. So you know what? I'm so proud of you. This is the best filter. I will never be going back. So let's get it set up. I am setting this up for my brand new tank that's arriving today. So I will be creating a scaping video. Like I said earlier, I'm going to set all that stuff up, but I wanted to record this specific step and make a specific video out of it because so many people just don't know how easy it is to set up a sponge filter. It's a little bit more complicated than just buying a hang-on back filter or another filter because those, they're just one single unit. You just take them out of the box, plug them up, hang it in the tank, boom, you're done. A sponge filter requires a few more steps, but it is completely worth it and you are making the right choice. So let's go ahead and hop on over to Walter's tank. I'm going to show you his sponge filter that I have set up, and then we are going to be setting up our very own. Here we are over at Walter's tank, and here is Walter himself. See if you can spot the sponge filter. I'm sure the stream of bubbles gave it away, but if it weren't for that, would you have known it was there? No. Which brings me to my next point. Sponge filters are so easy to hide, especially when you buy the small ones. The small ones will work in 5 or 10 gallon tanks, which are the most common. You might have to get one slightly larger if you have a bigger tank. So in order to see it, we do actually have to go around to the side over here, and there it is. It might look a little bit gunky, but this is completely normal. Whenever you do water changes, a lot of times the stuff floating around will get attracted to the filter, which is why, a little bit of a side note, every so often when you are performing a water change, you do need to clean this out. And it's just as easy as pulling it out of the tank and bringing it over to your bucket of dirty water that you just took out. Keep in mind, you may not want to rinse it directly under a sink, especially if the water is chlorinated, because it could harm the colony of beneficial bacteria in there. All you really need to do is take it out and swish it around in a bucket of either dechlorinated fresh water, or you can just stick it right in that bucket of wastewater that you're about to dump, swish it around, squeeze it a little bit, and then stick it right back in your tank. It is just that easy. So let's go ahead and hop right into setting up your very own sponge filter. To set up a sponge filter, you're really only going to need a few things, and I will actually put a little price list over here as we go, just so you can get an idea of how much it costs. It's really quite affordable in my opinion, and so worth it in the end. So first, our star of the show, sponge filter. Obviously, you have to have one of these. And on Amazon right now, I can get one for $4 to $5, this size right here. It is the smallest size available. Here it is with my hand to scale, and it is my favorite by far. It is recommended for tanks up to 10 gallons. So if you have any larger, you might have to go a little bit bigger with your sponge, but they're still super affordable. This is just my favorite because number one, it's easy to hide. Number two, it is so cheap. Secondly, you're going to need some airline tubing. This is leftover that I have had for literally years. I bought a huge pack of this that came with some other things on Amazon. I think it's around $15 to $19. I'm going to put the price of the whole pack, a picture of it too, so you know what it looks like, and a link to it in the description. So I am down to my last few feet of it, which is enough for this sponge filter, but if I do need any more for anything else, I will have to buy some more. There are 3 small pieces that you're going to need. First is a suction cup. Like I said earlier, this will actually come with the airline tubing when you buy it, so you don't have to worry about buying this separately. This will also come with the airline tubing that I bought. This is an air stone. It is a really crucial part of your sponge filter. And this is also a very, very, very crucial piece of your sponge filter. It is an airflow regulator. That's what I call it. I don't know what people call it, but that's what I call it, an airflow regulator. You'll need these 3 pieces. And finally, the sponge filter would not be complete without
the air pump. This is a very, very special part of the whole thing. You can buy so many different brands of air pump. This is the brand that I use, the Dymax, but literally you could buy any kind of air pump. This one I think might be on the slightly more expensive side, but honestly it was sent to me, so thank you Dymax for sending me this air pump. It is interesting because it has 2 outlets, and all the other ones I had before did not. So if you wanted to, let's say, have 2 tanks side by side, you could actually just have 1 pump for both of these sponge filters. But typically the pump that you buy will only have 1 outlet. It just depends on the pump that you get. I will show you a picture of the air pump that I have for this tank. It was pretty cheap. I'd like to say it was about $5 or $6. It's great. It's pretty silent. I really can't hear it. Same for this. It's very rare that you would get an air pump that is super loud or obnoxious, but I know that these 2 are good. So you just choose whichever one you want. It doesn't really matter. And with that, let's get this air pump set up. First, what you're going to do is take your sponge that you bought, and you can pull off this tubing piece with this little disc right here. Pull up. Now, I actually didn't mean for that to happen, but that's fine too, so it actually just completely came apart. What you really want to do is get the top here away from this canister. So you want to separate the 2, just like that. So now we have our individual pieces. The way that we have this designed right here is actually going to make it impossible for me to stick an air stone down in there, and that is exactly what I need to do. So I'm going to have to take some scissors or a knife and cut this out. Please be careful. I'm actually going to go ahead and off screen cut this little bit off. Upon further inspection, I just realized that there's a super easy way to cut it out, so I did actually want to show you. For some reason I was thinking I'd have to reach down in there and try to saw it out, but there are these spokes, so if you'll pull this little canister out, you can just snip each spoke super easily with scissors. So that is the safest and easiest option. And just like that, our little piece comes out. You really don't need it, especially since you're putting an air stone in there. I highly recommend doing so. If you don't use an air stone and you just put it directly in, what's going to happen is you are going to get an insanely strong flow of bubbles, way too strong for a betta fish, and the water's just going to be flying everywhere. It's not going to be pleasant. So you really want an air stone in here because it distributes the air more evenly and you get better bubbles, if that makes sense. So the next step is to actually do the same with this. You're going to cut these 4 little pieces here, cut them out completely. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, we have conquered these spokes and now it is all back together. We have all the pieces here. So all you're going to do is fit the sponge right back on the filter like so. Once you grab your airline tubing and the air stone, you need to grab this little piece. I wish I had the names for all the pieces, but I'm just gonna have to be stuck with saying this little piece because I don't know if they have specific names. What you're going to do is you're going to take all these pieces, feed the airline tubing down this little piece of clear tube, then feed it through this top section. Fit the tubing into said section, just like this. It looks kind of like a little top hat. And then you're going to connect the air stone. Make sure it's down in there really tight, and you are good to go. All you need to do now is insert this down into the sponge. And there you have it. The major part of the sponge filter is done. You just did the hardest part and you are almost completely there. So what you're going to do next is determine how much of this you actually need. I don't think I need all of this, but it's hard to tell because I don't have my tank right now. Odds are you already have your tank set up. So go ahead and measure and cut where you need. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to find the end of the airline tubing, the opposite end here, and I'm going to show you exactly how to attach it to your air pump. Because this air pump has 2 outlets, there's something that you're going to need to do if you have an air pump with 2 outlets. What you're going to need to do is block this outlet with something. Otherwise, it's going to be super duper loud when you plug it in. Trust me, I've done it before. So to attach it, you get it firmly lodged in here. If you have an air pump like I do with this end, you're going to need to plug it up. And since I don't have a second filter to hook it up to, I have to get creative. So I actually ended up making this little piece right here. It's just about an inch long piece of tubing that I have clipped off with a miniature chip clip. And what I did is I just plugged it up directly to this. This is just going to keep this from being super loud. I don't know how it works, but yeah, when you plug it up and there's only one, if there's two outlets, it is super loud. You can really hear it, so that's going to keep it from being loud. If you only have one end, great, you're good. You don't have to do this step, but I did, so that's just a little tip right there. Now, for some reason, I did actually forget the most important part. I don't really know how, but I did. So remember this little piece. You probably remembered it and you were thinking, wait, where does that piece come in? Well, I'm about to show you. A few inches or however long you want out from the actual pump, you're going to cut it, just completely cut it. And that's going to make sense in just a minute. Wherever you cut it, you can decide, but I like to cut it close to the air pump. So boom, now it is cut. And now all we have to do is attach each end of the little airflow doohickey, and then we're set. Get that in there, make sure it is firm. It's not gonna wiggle around. And there you have it, your sponge filter is completely set up. The last thing you need to know is how to use this airflow regulator. So when you have this plugged in, odds are this little piece will probably be all the way loosened. So when you turn it this way, it's going to tighten it, and when you turn it to the right, you're actually going to loosen it. But I guess it depends on how you have it turned. I just happen to have it turned the opposite way. Either way, you just figure out which way you turn it and it loosens and tightens it. That's up to you. So what you're going to do is when it's plugged in and it's in your tank, watch the airflow. If the bubbles are way too strong, if they're stronger than, you can see this one just kind of popping up. If it's stronger than this and it's just creating a big stream, it's blowing stuff around, you need to tighten this little piece right here. And what that's going to do is lessen the airflow. And you can really eyeball this part, so all you need to do is toggle it back and forth. And once you are at your ideal bubble stream, that's it, you got it. And now you have a fully functioning sponge filter. And there you have it, a super easy sponge filter setup anybody could accomplish. I think this took me, since I was filming, it probably took me around 10-ish minutes, but if you're not filming and you're just really into it, it could take you less than 5 minutes to set this up. So go get your sponge filter set up, get it in your tank. I think you're going to absolutely love it. You made the best decision for your Betta and for your tank. I will never go back to any other filter. And if you happen to like hang on back filters and maybe you're just watching this because you watch the other videos on my channel, consider this. It may not be everybody's favorite, but I will tell you that number one, it is 100% safe for your Betta. There is no way, unless your Betta is like Houdini or something, there's no way that your Betta can get stuck in here. Absolutely no way. So your Betta is 100% safe with this. It's not going to damage fins like a bunch of the filters with the water intakes. It's not going to suck your Betta up against it. And even if it did, it would be insanely gentle on their fins. So enough said. If you're not convinced by now that you need a sponge filter, you may never be, but that's okay. We all have our preferences.
All right, now you know how to set up a sponge filter. Super easy, I told you. And honestly, I'm never going back. I love sponge filters so much. I love them. They're fantastic. And super easy also to use to seed a new aquarium. So for example, if you have an aquarium going and you have the sponge in it and it's established, if you want to start a new tank, what you can do is take that old sponge filter, put it in your new tank, and put a new sponge filter in your old tank. It won't disrupt your tank at all because the other surfaces of your tank already have beneficial bacteria on them, so it won't mess anything up. But what it will do is help to make the cycle in your new tank much faster. I've done this several times and it really works. So that's one quick tip for you. Okay, 3 questions that you may still have afterwards. Do I need a check valve, and how do I prevent back siphoning if the pump loses power? I've never had an issue with back siphoning. If the pump loses power, the only thing it's going to do is stop putting bubbles into your tank. So you don't have to worry about that. If it loses power, nothing's going to happen, and no water isn't going to come shooting out of your tank. It'll just stop working pretty much. And yes, as I mentioned in the video, you are going to need a little flow valve. Usually, like I said, they will come in with the airline tubing when you buy it. But if for some reason you didn't get it, they're like $2-ish bucks online, I think. So you should be able to find it pretty easily. Find which way will tighten it and which way will loosen it. And there you go. You got your sponge filter. How long should I run the sponge filter alongside my old filter media so I don't crash my cycle? Now, what a lot of people will do is put in a new sponge filter next to the old one before they set up their tank and just let them cycle together. You can do that, but at least for me, now sometimes you might just want to play it safe. So maybe you'll want to cycle, maybe you'll want to establish that new sponge filter next to your old one at the same time. For me, it's worked. If you're afraid it might accidentally crash your cycle, basically just doing what I said earlier, taking out the old sponge filter, putting it in your new one, and then putting a new one in immediately into your old tank. If you're afraid that'll crash your cycle, you can play it safe. And you can run a new sponge filter or just place a new sponge filter next to your old one so that it kind of gets the beneficial bacteria on it. If you want to do that, then you can just let it sit for a few weeks and that should do it. 2 to 3 weeks and then it's seeded. So I hope that answered your question. Now we're going to move on to the next module, which is how to hide the ugly tank wires and equipment in your tank. I honestly love aesthetically pleasing tanks, and a lot of times the wires and different equipment can kind of ruin that for me. So I figured out some ways to hide it to the best of my ability that will really make a tank just kind of flow and look really nice. So that's what we're going to talk about now.
Are you tired of all the equipment in your Betta tank being a bit unsightly? Are you tired of all those wires behind your tank looking like a not so neat spider web? And would you really like to learn how to hide that and keep that pretty much out of sight, out of mind? If so, then this video is for you. So stay tuned and let's get started. For the longest time I've struggled with wires and equipment. They are necessary, obviously, but they're pretty ugly. And no matter how small they are, obviously the smaller the better, it's still going to be visible if you don't know how to do it right. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer, you may or may not be able to hide it 100%, but I can guarantee you that this video is going to help you hide it at least 90%, and it's just going to make your tank look way better overall. Moving on to the first tip, you need to pick one spot in the tank where all those wires will converge. What do I mean by that? Basically, you need one corner in your tank where you're going to run all of those wires and then they're all going to come together. So if you have a light that's in the middle of a tank like mine, you need to get that wire kind of wrapped and you need to get it running over to, let's say, the left corner of your tank. That's where you're also going to run the wires and tubing from your filter, from your heater, from your light. All of that is going to go into one central area. That way it makes it easier to hide because really you're going to only be focusing on one area instead of a million other smaller areas around the tank. It just makes it a lot easier. Now, how can you make sure they stay together like this? Well, you could take some packing tape, wrap a little piece around it so that they're held together. If you want to run a wire along the top of your tank so that it can get over to that left or right corner, then you can use really small chip clips. I do believe they sell those in Walmart in the desk or office sections, somewhere over there. It could be with the supplies, office supplies, crafting supplies. Anyway, I do know that they sell some small chip clips and those can work and I do use those sometimes. So if you need something like that, then do it. Obviously, packing tape. I use packing tape quite a lot. It has become my best friend and really, as long as it's glass, it always comes off, so I haven't had any problems with it. I didn't realize this, but I just mentioned the second tip in the first tip, which is to use anything you need to secure those wires together. Once you've tucked them, secure them. After you do that, there are some different ways that you can hide these. One of my favorite ways is to plant up tall plants in the tank around that section. Now, this doesn't just hide the wires, it also hides the equipment. So in my new 7-gallon cube tank that I currently have, you can see that I have some tall plants currently growing. They're not quite to their full length, and obviously when they grow bigger and bushier, they're going to hide the equipment better. But here's just a good idea of what I have going so far. It is growing, and they are known to grow tall and to be good background plants. So you always want to do your research. Make sure that you do choose plants that are going to grow tall and bushy so that they do hide your equipment. This also goes for the wires behind the tank. If you are putting everything correctly, then you're going to have the wires kind of running over to that same corner, and then in that same corner on the inside of the tank, you'll have your equipment. And then pretty much you just plant some tall plants around the equipment. It's going to grow tall and it's going to hide both the equipment and the wires. Another tip, and this one doesn't apply to everyone, this just applies to those who have a light like I do. I recently upgraded my tank light, so instead of resting on the top of my tank, this one is a lot like a book light. So it has little screws that help me secure it anywhere to the tank's wall, and then it bends like a book light. And the only issue I had with this light is the fact that the wire comes sticking straight out of the side. I mean, it's not discreet at all. If I left it to do its own thing, it would be hanging up and over one of the sides of my tanks, which obviously we could not have. So what I did is I wrapped it around the light fixture before I totally fixed it to the tank. I wrapped it down the neck and then down to the bottom, as you can see here, and then I ran it over to the back left corner. And that's just how easy it is. So if you have a light like this that has a kind of weird placement for wires, then that's the way to do it. Find a way to wrap it around things, especially the light, if your light has a neck like mine. The next tip, and this is something I actually learned just recently, if you don't have one of the cylindrical tank heaters, but you have one that's more flat and wider, that's the best way I can explain it. I'm also going to put a picture. This is the heater I have. It is a Haiger 50 watt, I think it's a 50 watt. I love it, I really, really do. But I noticed that if you take this heater and you smack it right on the back wall, you're going to see it a whole lot more if the tank is front facing. If you're facing the front of the tank, you're going to see an object that's placed like this much more than if it were placed like this on the opposite wall. See what I mean? I'll show you, because I just did that to my tank as well, and that's going to make it even easier to hide. Again, if your tank is front facing. If for some reason you see the side of your tank a lot more, then it's going to be more obvious. But for most people, this is going to be a really good tip, because you want to face the front of your tank. You want to see everything here. I'm pretty sure my tank is out of the picture for this video, but just kind of follow my general gestures and I'll show you some B-roll. But for most people who want a front-facing aquarium like I do, this is a great tip and it really saves you. If you have a cylindrical filter, really you could place it to the side or you could place it on that back wall. It doesn't matter, because it's the same, if that makes sense. It's not going to be any more noticeable either way. It's a cylinder. And last but not least, one of my other favorite tips, honestly, all of these are my favorite tips, but I really like this one. Use your hardscape as you are scaping your tank. This is kind of important from day one. When you're scaping your tank, you want to put this into play, but use your hardscape to block and hide the equipment. You can basically section off a small portion in the right or the left back corner of your tank. I prefer to go to the left back corner. I'm not sure what it is about that corner. I just really like that corner. I've done it in all my other tanks. So you're going to create a little pocket. Your heater, your filter are going to rest here. The wires are going to go up and over behind it on the outside of the tank. You're going to have your plants placed around it, and then you can also use hardscape. Again, we will refer to my 7-gallon cube tank because I did the same exact thing with this. If you haven't seen my full video where I show you how I scape it, I highly recommend that you check it out. I will link it in the description, and also if I can have it pop up over here somewhere, I will. It's not only fun to watch, it's actually really informative because it demonstrates the exact points that I laid out in this video today. I used all of those when I was setting up this tank. My favorite hardscape to use are rocks and driftwood. My absolute favorite. I love the combination of rocks, driftwood, and aquatic plants. They are the best, and it is really easy to kind of fix them in any way you want and kind of manipulate it so that it hides the equipment in your tank. I hope that this video helped you hide some of that unsightly equipment. In case you are concerned that wedging your stuff into the corner is going to keep the filter from filtering correctly or the heater from heating, don't worry, it's going to filter and heat just fine. You just don't want to really crowd plants around it so that it's blocking the wall of your filter. This is assuming you have a sponge filter. If you have a hang-on back filter, that's not really going to be an issue. But if you have a sponge filter, which I love because it's safe for bettas and it's easier to hide, keep that in mind. Hang-on back filters aren't bad, but I do prefer a sponge filter for several reasons, but we won't get into that right now. You can put plants and hardscape around it, but leave a little bit of space for the water to flow around the filter and the heater, and you'll be just fine. It will work well, it won't overheat, it will still filter. So just in case that popped into your mind, don't worry, it's not gonna be an issue at all. Let me know if this video helped you, and if you have any other points, maybe you've done this before, please put them in the comments if you have some extra tips. I have had some subscribers do that before, and it always makes me smile because I love that they're just wanting to add on to the knowledge shared in the video and help other betta keepers such as yourself. So check out the comments. If this video has been out for a while, there might be some more tips there for you.
Now you know how to hide that ugly equipment. So let's go over a couple questions you may still have after watching that video. In case you're wondering, what are the best tall plants for hiding equipment without blocking the flow or becoming a maintenance nightmare? My favorite are the larger variety of Java fern. They're kind of bushy, but they don't go crazy large like the Amazon sword will. I had an Amazon sword once and I used it as a background plant because it grew really tall. It was almost too tall if you were just going to use it to, let's say, hide your sponge filter. In my 6-gallon tank, I did, although I recently moved around the tankscape, but I did have a Java fern in front of the sponge filter to hide it. Now what I did is I just stacked some rocks in front of it, so it hid it from view and it made it look really good. So just FYI, you don't have to use plants to hide it. You can also use other things like rocks and wood. Number 2, how do I hide equipment in a small tank without making it look cramped? And I believe I covered this in my video, but just as a quick overview, what you want to do is congregate all of the equipment into one corner. So choose which corner of the tank you want to put the equipment. For me, that's going to be the right back corner. So I'll have the sponge filter here and I will have the heater right here. So it'll all be in that corner. And then what I do is I just build my hardscape around that corner. If for some reason I haven't been able to get to it very recently with the sponge filter while I'm doing maintenance, I'll just kind of take it out and then I'll just siphon that little back corner. It's no big deal. And because no one sees it if there's a little poop and stuff back there, as long as I clean it every now and then, it's gonna be fine. What's the cleanest way to manage cords outside the tank in a way that is safe and still looks neat? Again, I addressed this in the video, but just really quickly, because you have the equipment already kind of together in one corner of the tank, well, the wires are going to run up and over the tank together anyway. But the best thing that you could do is run it directly behind that section of the glass. So you have your heater and filter here. Well, the wires are going to run up and over that back glass of the tank. Ideally, right behind there, whatever your tank is on, you would have an outlet so that it would run down and into the outlet on this wall here. That is ideal. However, because of the way my bedroom is set up, the only outlet I have over there is actually behind my bed. So even though I have my tank, which you can't see it, but it's right over there, because I have it right beside my bed, I have to run it over a little bit. And because there's just a small gap in between my bed and my bedside table where I have that tank, I can see the wires. So not completely ideal just from the aesthetic standpoint, but I feel like a lot of people would have an outlet directly behind the tank. So all you would do is just run those wires down, plug them in, and you shouldn't be able to see them at all. Even if you can see them, it's probably very minimal. If you want to keep the wires together, if maybe they have a tendency to kind of split out, you could wrap around with a little bit of Velcro or something just to kind of keep it all together. And it should be relatively easy to hide. All right. Now that we have figured that out, let's move on to my aquascaping secrets. So these tips are really going to help you while you are setting up that scape in your tank.
Are you ready to create an absolutely gorgeous aquascape and a perfect tank for your fin friend? If so, then today this video is for you. I'm really excited because I'm going to be sharing with you my top 6 aquascaping tips. A lot of these I learned along the way as I was going in my own Betta Fish keeping journey, and I'm super excited to get to share these with you to not only save you the time but also the heartache of trying to learn these things yourself, because I know sometimes you gotta learn things the hard way and I don't want that for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop over into tip number 1. It is really important when you're setting up your tank to make sure you have the right substrate thickness. You really need about 1 to 2 inches of substrate. Now, the thickness in mine is about 1 inch, so 2 inches could be a little bit overkill. It just depends on what you want. I have found that about 1 inch is the sweet spot, although even though you can't tell, this tank actually slopes upward, which means that in the back, the substrate in this tank is probably over 2 inches thick. It could be borderlining on 3.5, but that was just my personal preference. You don't have to build a slope into your substrate. That is completely optional. But whether you want the substrate to be completely flat throughout the tank, or if you want a little bit of a rise, make sure that the lowest point is at least 1 inch. Why is this important? Because you are going to be putting live plants in your tank and they need a thick layer of substrate to hold on. When you initially bury the roots of the plants that need to be planted, because some don't, so you do want to do some research on that, but the plants that need their roots down in there need a thick layer of substrate. If the layer is too thin, let's say your layer of substrate is a couple centimeters or half an inch, some of the larger plants, that's just not enough and they're going to come floating back up and it's going to be really frustrating. It's also not going to look very good if half of the roots are still sticking out and you weren't able to fully get your plant nestled down into the substrate, if that makes sense. Which brings me to the next point. A lot of people struggle with plants floating back up after they have planted them, and that can be a really big frustration. If you have a plant that needs to be rooted, but it just keeps on floating up, make sure that the roots are well situated into the substrate. That is the first thing to try. If for some reason it just doesn't work, then likely you're going to need to wait a while until the plants put out roots on their own that will then go far down into the substrate and will anchor that plant. I mean, that plant will be solid within about a month. But until then, you need to keep it down there so that it is able to grow the roots. So the best way to keep them down is to utilize a rock or a piece of wood that you are using in your hardscape. I find that rocks are best because they're heavier, kind of obvious, but I do like to use rocks. So if you have a small piece of rock, you can position it over that plant in a way that holds it down. Don't squish your plant, but find a way to utilize rock or wood to then keep it down. And within a couple weeks or so, you should be able to completely remove it because your plant should have anchored itself enough to keep it from floating up. If you have a plant that doesn't need its roots to be buried in the substrate, like Bucephalandra or Anubis or Java Fern, you can anchor them to your wood or rocks, which is exactly what I have done in this tank. There are a couple of ways to do so, so I'm going to walk you through those really quick. The first time I tried to anchor a plant, I wanted this Java Fern to be secured to a branch of my driftwood. I grabbed some string, I used embroidery thread because I just had some extra on hand, and I wound it around that piece of wood a couple times, making sure to go over the Java Fern base and the roots, and then I securely tied a little bit of knot, cutting off the edges. Now, if for some reason you can see the thread, or you know you'll see the thread and it will bother you, you can also use fishing line, which I have used in the past as well. I actually just used that to secure the Anubis right here to a piece of my driftwood. I used that because I knew that I would see the thread and it would really bother me. So you can use a thread, or B, some fishing line, and that will work just fine. But if you want to really secure it and you know that you are not going to want that plant to move, you can also use super glue. It is a little bit trickier, and you definitely don't want it to end up gluing your finger to the rocks or the wood. But when done right, super glue is actually safe for your tank, but make sure you look up the right kind. I have heard from some people that for a little bit after you glue the plant to the rock, if any bit of the super glue is visible, it's going to be kind of white for a while, but if you wait it out, it then goes clear again and will look great. So if that's something that you want to do, go for it. It is completely aquarium safe as long as you use the right super glue. Now, for the bucephalandra that I have in this dragonstone right here, it had so many little nooks and crannies and crevices that I just shoved it down in there, and it's held pretty well. There have been a couple of instances where the bucephalandra, some of it has dislodged, which honestly, I kind of think is this stinker's fault. Pretty sure it's his fault because he likes to swim up in there, and so I think sometimes he dislodges them. But overall, it works pretty well. So if you have rocks that's really porous or just has a lot of little nooks and crannies, sometimes you can just shove them down in there if the plants are small enough, and that works too. Tip number 4, I actually didn't look because I do not script these videos. I included in tip number, I think it was 2 or 3, which was to use fishing line to tie and anchor your plants. So just a little bit of a refresher there. Tip number 5, as we mentioned substrate earlier, I have noticed that substrate that is a little bit grainier, like a fine gravel, is really good for holding your plant down. This is exactly what I used here, and anchoring these plants and just sticking them down in there was an absolute breeze. I had no issues whatsoever. It was really great. I will link you to the substrate that I used because I think a 5-pound bag was about $14, and I only needed one since I was layering it with some planted substrate, so it worked very well for me. Grainier sand naturally is going to help hold your plants down better because it is able to get into the nooks and crannies easier, if that makes sense. When you think about the larger pieces of rocks, they can only come together so well because they're bigger, a little bit chunkier. Sometimes you need the weight plus the smaller granules, so it's up to you what you use, but sometimes a slightly smaller substrate works best. And last but not least, I've noticed that when first aquascaping your tank, usually you'll do it all on the same day. I know that that's what I do. I like to plan ahead, so I have all the plants on hand, I have the substrate, I have everything, so I can just sit for a few hours and get it really set up. Now, once you have everything set up and it is beautiful and it looks really good, please, when you're filling it with water, take your sweet time. I know that it's going to be very, very hard because you want to get it filled really quickly so that everything can settle and then it can get cycled, and sometimes you just want to see how sweet it looks when filled with water. I completely understand. That's how I felt when I was setting up this tank, but if you're not careful and you pour in the water really quickly, what's going to happen is the force of that water will not only completely destroy if you have layered substrate, the substrate layer, because the force of that water is just going to completely dislodge it. It will also dislodge your plants and just mess everything up. I remember not too long ago seeing a reel that somebody posted. I think it was a reel or some Instagram post where they had just spent hours setting up a beautiful tank and they did not pour the water in slowly enough, and they were actually filming when they did it and you could just see it go everywhere, so they had to completely redo it. So I don't want that to happen to you. One of the best ways to slowly add it in the beginning is to start with a little plastic cup. I have a lot of them laying around. I don't know, you could use one of those little disposable solo cups if you have one, something like that. I like to fill it with water. Then you hold it down as close to the substrate as you can and slowly pour the water. Sometimes it helps even more if you pour the water directly onto something to soften the flow, if that makes sense. A lot of times I like to pour it directly onto a rock that's in my hardscape or in a piece of wood. And then once your tank is partially filled, you can then go in with maybe a larger pot of water, or you can also put a siphon in your pot and kind of make it backflow into your tank. I don't know if that makes sense. I did it. I didn't want to fill it bit by bit with the water all the way, so what I did was I filled the pot with water and I held it above the level of my tank. So I actually put it up on my leg and I propped my leg up here so that the pot of clean water was elevated. And then what I did is I took the siphon tube, I removed all the pieces, so I just had the tube, sucked on the one end with my mouth to make a little bit of a current, and then I put that down into the tank and water immediately started flowing in. But I still had to put my thumb on the end to make sure that the flow coming out of the tube was not so strong that it blew everything around. I'll add some clips from that video of my entire tankscape, which, by the way, if you want to see the whole thing, you can find the link here if you want to watch it. It's really fun. I think it's about 40 or 50 minutes long, but you can watch the entire process, and I honestly believe that that will also help you gain more insight into aquascaping than what was just covered in this video.
Alright, now you know how to aquascape your tank. Let's go over the 3 key points. Number 1, start with the right substrate depth. We discussed that earlier. You want it to be about 1 inch for the planted substrate and then 1 inch or 2 for the sand cap on the top. Anchor the plants in a way that is going to be easier to deal with later. So, to keep your plants from floating up, a lot of times when people try to bury them in the substrate, they might have difficulty with that. Usually I will wedge them in between a rock or some wood. And as long as you can keep it wedged there long enough, that plant will actually anchor itself to whatever hardscape you have it on naturally. The roots will grow and it will anchor itself. And at that point, it's not going anywhere unless you pull it off. So that is the easiest way to keep your plant from floating up or becoming disconnected from the hardscape in any way. And then fill the tank slowly to make sure none of your hard work gets absolutely destroyed. What I like to do is go in with a cup and I'll fill it cupful by cupful, just enough to get about 1 inch above the substrate. So, you know, the tank, I don't fill the whole tank with a cup, but just enough so that then the water is starting to rise up from the substrate. Then at this point, what you could do is you could take a pot of water and slowly pour it in. You could also take the hose from your siphon, put one in, and you'll see me do this you should see me do this in my videos. At the end of this course, I'm going to show you how I set up those tanks. You'll see me do this. So I take a pot of clean water and I'll take the hose from my siphon, I'll put one down in there, I'll elevate the pot with my leg, I'll suck on that free end of the hose, and it will run the clean water down into my tank. Or at this point, if I want to, I could put my finger over part of the opening just to make the flow a little bit slower, and that kind of helps me control how I fill it up. I also like to redirect the stream of water onto a piece of hardscape in the tank. That also helps to really lessen and kind of spread the flow of water so that it gently goes down into the substrate. The key thing really that I'm trying to do when I first set up my tank is not disturb the layer of substrate in the tank or mess it up. So just find some way that you can fill it in a slow fashion. If you feel like you should just fill it up cupful by cupful and that's the easiest way for you to make sure you don't mess anything up, go for it. It will take a little bit longer, but it can be worth it. Now, which plants should be buried versus attached? Now, if you recall, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you want to know which one needs the roots buried or which one can just be attached to wood or rock, just Google it. Google that specific plant and it will tell you exactly what it needs and what it does best and what environment it does best in. What substrate type works best for keeping plants anchored? I have found that sand, again, if you do, the planted substrate and the sand on top, the sand, because it's finer graveled, it will help to anchor those plants pretty quickly if you kind of just shove it down in there in the sand and then you heap the sand back over it. I've never had a plant float back up after I did that. It was very easy. What's the easiest slow fill method that doesn't involve siphoning with your mouth? Probably the cup method. Again, it's kind of slow, but it's worth it. And if you wanted, you could find a bigger cup so that you don't have to make so many trips to get you some new water and import in. So that is it for this section. Moving on, let's discuss how to make your Betta tank more natural. Hello friend, and welcome back to the channel. I hope that you are doing well and having a
fantastic day. Today I am excited because I'm going to be telling you how to make your Betta tank look more natural. I have been there, so I understand completely. Typically, when you start out, your tank doesn't look like a Betta's natural habitat, but over time you learn and you grow, and then you realize, hey, maybe I should try adding some wood in there or some plants in there. Take it away from looking like a toy box to a little underwater ecosystem. And I understand that completely because that is exactly what happened to me. Even though I had decor that was slightly on the more natural side, I just didn't quite feel that satisfaction that you get when you create something like the tank that I have here. Oh, and by the way, if it seems a little empty back there, that's because I'm actively in the process of setting up a brand new tank. So, if you're not subscribed yet, stick around because I will be posting a complete tankscape video, which is both entertaining and informative because it will show you how to set up a tank of your own if you are interested in that kind of thing. Now, let's just go ahead and hop into the tips. I'm just going to be firing them off one after the other, so if you want, take notes, or you should be able to also read the transcript of this video, so if that helps at all, go ahead and do that. First of all, I would recommend that you get rid of leaf hammocks. Now, this may seem counterintuitive. I used to have a leaf hammock as well, and I know that Bettas love it because they do love resting near the surface, but it was still so fake. And I could just see it in the tank. I could see the suction cup, I could see the leaf. It didn't look real at all. And sometimes the wire that's inside the leaf will actually rust, which can pose a risk to your bed, although that doesn't typically happen. I just didn't like it. It didn't feel quite natural, even though it was more on the natural side. Instead of doing this, I recommend getting a larger real life plant. Highly suggest getting you an Anubis barteri, I believe it's called, something of the sort. Anubis have a huge variety. You have small ones, you have nano, you have big ones, big leaf ones. But if you get one of the ones that are on the large to medium side, you will pretty much get the same result as you would a leaf hammock, except this one's totally real. And you don't have to worry about burying in the substrate because Anubis like to have their roots out. They feed from the water column, which is why you need liquid fertilizer for those. And you can either attach it to wood or rocks at the bottom, or if you want, you can find some way to attach it closer to the surface to kind of simulate that Betta hammock type look and feel, but it's going to seem a lot more natural. Now, a lot of people will glue it or tie it to a suction cup, which will hold it up towards the surface. And I know that earlier I said I didn't like the suction cup on the Betta hammock, but because an Anubis is usually a little ball of roots and then it is bushy, it's living, it's actively growing larger, a lot of times the suction cup is a little bit less obvious, and so it just looks so much better. You can also do something like create your own little DIY Betta shelf with a piece of driftwood. You can glue a suction cup to a piece of driftwood, which is what one of the members in my free Facebook group, the Betta Fish Forum, did, and he posted all about it. He, I guess, drilled a little hole in a piece of driftwood, just super glued a suction cup to the driftwood, and then made a little Betta lead. That looked very, very natural. So those are a couple things you can do instead of having a leaf hammock in your tank. The second thing you can do, and this is just going to depend on the type of tank you may have, but if you have a tank that has a built-in filter where it's just black and it's a large chunk of the back of the tank, then you may want to consider removing it, and instead of having that, install a little sponge filter. Now, you may be wondering, why does this make it look more natural? I can't exactly explain it, but if you head over to my video that I made where I personally removed the one in my tank, I think you'll see it for yourself. It really just brightens up the tank, especially since most of the dividers for those built-in filters are black and plastic, and they just make it look dark and dreary, and it's just not super attractive. Sponge filters are much easier to hide, and I really love to hide them by putting wood in front of them, or some rocks, or just placing a plant when I am first setting up the tank. I'll put it in front of where the sponge filter will sit, and eventually it will grow big and bushy. That is exactly what I did with this tank here. I have the sponge filter in the back. You may or may not be able to see it, but I put a large piece of driftwood up front, and that plant has now grown up, and I hardly ever see that sponge filter. So It just brightens up the tank and it makes it feel more natural, because instead of focusing on a black background, I can focus on all the hardscape that's really popping out now that the background isn't dark and solid. Tip number 3, use real driftwood instead of resin structures. Resin structures aren't terrible, and they do make some that look like real wood. So if you really feel like you want to use that instead, go for it. But there's still something that you can sense about it. Like, it may look real-ish, but it never truly looks like the real thing. Driftwood is no harder keeping it in your aquarium than a resin structure. You also really don't have to think about any chemicals leaching. You don't have to worry about any paint or anything, even though most resin structures are quite safe. It's just natural driftwood. There's just something about it. Ever since I added it to my tank, I'm just never going back. I like to get it off of Amazon. You can get it other places, but it's usually a lot more expensive. You never really know what you're getting from Amazon, but it's always worked out really well, so you can check that out. I'll leave a link in the description to the exact type of wood that I use. In order to prepare it for your tank, really all I did was boil it for a couple hours, just because I wanted the tannins removed so that my tank water would be nice and clear. If you don't boil the wood, first of all, it will float for a few days before becoming waterlogged, so boiling does help it become waterlogged faster. But primarily, it's just going to leach out those tannins into your water, which are not going to hurt your betta. They're actually very beneficial, but it's going to turn your tank water amber, brown, kind of dark. It will essentially begin to create what is called a black water tank. A black water tank is a tank that has a bunch of botanicals in it that are releasing those tannins, so you get a very dark ambery color. I think they're pretty, but it's not my cup of tea. I don't really want a black water tank, so I like to boil my driftwood. And that's really all there is to it. As long as you have some sort of cleaners like night snails or shrimp, I have both in this tank, they will keep the wood nice and clean. If pieces of it start breaking down, they'll eat it, and it just works really well. So consider using real driftwood instead of those resin structures. Instead of buying plastic or resin betta hides, buy a nice bushy live plant. Something like a Java fern is really going to work well. Now, why do I recommend this instead? It's really going to do the same thing for your betta, and it just looks more natural. You also don't have to worry about possible rough edges or any sharp pieces tearing your betta's fins. You don't have to worry about small holes in the hide that your betta could get stuck in. It's just a bushy plant, and your betta will be able to swim in and through it and rest on it if he wants to. It creates the same feel for your fish, it's just that it just looks more natural. Java fern is a really good plant for this. You could also get a type of Anubis like we talked about earlier. And I also really like the crypt, which is a type of plant. I believe the full name is a cryptocoryne, something of the sort. Hopefully I'm not botching up the name. One thing I really like that elevated the natural look in my tank are floating plants. There are some kinds that are harder to care for than others, but most of them are really easy to care for. But my top favorites are Salvinia. I love Salvinia. There are a few different types, super duper easy to care for. Unfortunately, I used to have a lot in here, but for some reason they got these mites on them, and so I had to throw them away. That doesn't happen to everyone. It's quite rare. I am imagining they probably came in on something else, maybe one of my houseplants that I added to the tank. I don't know. I'll probably just have to buy some more. But I do really love floating plant. They grow really well, they are very low maintenance, and they just make it look so natural. Plus, they provide your betta an excellent place to build a bubble nest if he wants. Last but not least, remember the color palette. If it helps, you can look up some pictures of nature online, pictures of natural streams and riverbeds, so that you can kind of pick up on that natural color palette. When you walk into a pet store, you're really not going to see that. Hardly at all. Most of the things that they offer are neon, bright, flashy, it looks like candy or a carnival, and it's just not natural. So the best way to make your tank look natural is to apply the natural color palette. And really, any type of natural material is gonna have that in it. So, for example, with Edwin's tank, all of the plants are these beautiful greens. Some are kind of purpley almost. I have light greens, dark greens, huge variety of greens. I have a purpley browns, and rocks have a nice orangey red to them, as well as some darker grays. And the substrate is also a bunch of tans and beiges, and I absolutely love it. Now, it would seem kind of bland without the plants. So the plants are really the crowning glory of your aquascape. I mean, they really are. So go for plants. The more plants, the better, in my opinion. Now, you don't want to completely crowd out your betta, but you do want a lot of plants because they look good. They give your betta a nice, comfortable place to hide. They're super beneficial because they filter the water in your tank. They provide hiding places for tank mates and everything. So why would you not want live plants? I feel like I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I do love live plants, and they are really what bring everything together and make it very bright, warm, and inviting. So there you have it, 6 more ways to make your tank feel like home for your betta fish.
All right, we are getting close to the end. At this point, the next 2 videos are going to be of me setting up my 2 betta tanks. So this is really going to show you how it all comes together. It's going to really help visualize things for you and just provide a really good step-by-step on how to do this. Really quick overview, like stupid simple. You get your tank. Decide what you're going to do for that substrate, right? If you want to layer it, but get your substrate down. Then you're going to need whatever hardscape you want for decor. For me, that's always wood and rocks. Get you your wood and rocks. Then you take some time, set it up how you want it. Once the hardscape looks perfect and just how you want it, get your plants and wedge them in, plant them wherever. Get your plants planted in there. Then you get your equipment, so your light, your filter, your heater. Position those in the tank. If you want some of the hardscape to hide that, go ahead and stick it in, assign them their spot, the heater and filter. You can arrange the rocks or whatever to kind of hide that in that corner, and then you are good to go. All you have to do is fill up the tank, plug in all the supplies, and now your tank can start to cycle. So that's just the quick, super easy, super simple, less than a minute overview. Let's go ahead and just hop into these 2 aquascapes really quickly. I think you're going to love it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I know that I really do enjoy just taking a couple of hours to set up a really nice tank. It is so much fun. And quick reminder, when you do this, don't let it feel like a chore. I mean, it's art. I mean, it really is. When you create your tank, you are creating art. You are creating an aquascape that has probably never been made before. If you need some inspiration, you can always Google some photos of tanks. You can also join my free Facebook group, the Betta Fish Forum. Everyone posts in there all about their tanks. We have just surpassed about 13,000 members, and it's growing every day. So there are plenty of tanks in there that can get you inspired. So if you want to join that group and get inspired for your next aquascape, you can go to the description, and I have a link to that as well for you. Let's go ahead and hop into the 2 tank setup videos. I'm excited to see what you think. Hello friends, today I'm going to show you my entire 6-gallon tank setup. I'm going to walk you through every single step. I filmed every single step, and I think that you will find this very helpful, especially if you're looking to set up your own Betta Fish tank. I know videos like this would have been really helpful when I was first setting mine up. I think they prove as a great source of inspiration, and also I find them very entertaining. So I hope that this does both of those for you. I went ahead and I set up my tank light. Now that tank light is in a temporary setting. I am going to be moving it. I don't like it there. Then I got my Fluval substrate, and I used this piece of paper that I folded into 4s to spread it out because this substrate is very dusty, very dirty. But a bit of a side note, you do not need to rinse this. When I first started using it for my tanks, I rinsed it a lot, and that's not going to do anything at all. It's still going to be very dusty, and if you do not layer your substrate right, it will make your tank water super cloudy still. So don't worry about rinsing that. It's not going to do anything for you. Just stick it right on in your tank. Next, I'm getting some sand or fine gravel. I believe it's sand, but it's not as fine as some other sand. Sometimes I call it fine gravel, but it's sand. And I spread a nice thick layer over the top of this substrate. Now, take your time with this step because it is really hard to move once you have it set up.
So take your time and make sure that this is perfect. A nice thick layer of sand is very necessary if you want to keep all that dust and dirtiness of the planted substrate down in there, and you don't want it to come out into the water. Last time I set up a tank, I did not make the layer thick enough, so it ended up making its way kind of towards the top within the last 6 months. So this time I made it much thicker. You want at least 1 inch of thickness with that sand alone. And that's really going to help you, especially when you put the water in after your tank setup is done. So that's what I did here. I really took my time. I made sure it was all perfectly straight, even. I did build up a little bit of a slope into the back. Not as dramatic as I have done with some other tanks, but I did make a little bit of a slope. After that, I started getting out my hardscape. So these stones are called white elephant skin stones. I bought them off of Etsy. Little bit of a side note, I will be linking everything I used in the description below, so if anything catches your eye, you'll know exactly where I got it from. Also, I am located in the US, so depending on where you live, the things that I use may or may not be available, but it's worth checking out. Again, this is another step that I do spend longer on. I want everything to be perfect and I want it to be functional. So I take a lot of time when I'm setting up the rocks and the wood in my tank, because I know once it's set up, you really want to keep it as it is. Now it is time to unbox the plants. I bought these from Boost Plant, an online shop, and this was actually my first order ever from them. And let me just say, I am extremely pleased and I will absolutely be buying from them again. Highly recommend if you're in a place where you can order them. They ship to the US and I think they may also ship to Canada. I can't remember, but anyway, their plants are gorgeous. And my whole point with this tank is I wanted to have plants that I have never had before. So I got some really, really nice ones, different plants I never had before. When I bought them, they had a sale going on, so they were already really reasonable. I'm very happy with the price, and they all were gorgeous. This plant is actually variegated a little bit, so you can see on the leaves there's some creamy, like a cream color along with the green. I also got some more bucephalandra, but this was a different kind than I have in my other tank in my 6-gallon cube. And this is also a Java fern. I thought it was really interesting. I've never had one with leaves that shape before. So love those. Once I had all of my plants out, I went ahead and positioned the wood because the plants come next, but you really need to have all your hardscape down like you want it before you put all of the plants in. So again, I just took a little while and I really played around with everything just to make sure I liked how it looked. I liked the functionality. Another little side note, and this is actually a tip, when you hardscape your tank, make sure that you are leaving space between the decor and the glass so that you will be able to get to it and clean it, because I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to make the perfect aquascape in your tank, but then later once there's algae on the glass and you're trying to reach it, you're constantly bumping into the wood and everything is shifting. So usually I like to take things a little bit away from the glass so that I have enough space to get in there with my hand or with a razor blade. I use that to scrape off algae. I also use a sponge, a little sponge that's on a handle, and it just makes it so much easier when you move stuff away from the tank. So this is the final hardscape, and now it's time to add plants. With this step, you can get creative and you can do whatever, but I really took the time to find little nooks and crannies in that wood and gaps in between the rocks where I could shove all that bucephalandra, because I don't usually glue my plants down. Sometimes people will glue them, but usually I just wedge them into the little crevices and they work really well because eventually they'll kind of root up against the rock or the wood and that will just hold them down. With that Anubis though, off camera I did end up securing it with some fishing line to the wood and it worked really well. So I just kept on going around and finding little nooks and crannies that I could hold the little bits and pieces. Some of the other plants I did actually plant down in there, but most of these plants, being Anubis and Java fern and bucephalandra, they don't actually like their roots planted, so I utilized the rocks
I had the rocks weigh them down. Make sure you research and find out whether or not you are supposed to plant the roots, because that can greatly affect the health of the plant overall. So after the plants were just how I wanted them, I repositioned that light and I got my sponge filter in the tank. If you want to know how I set up my sponge filter, you can check out this video right here. That will show you how I set it all up. And now it's time to add the water. At this stage, I went very slowly. Yes, it was very tedious, but it is worth it because I have to make sure that I don't disturb that layer, that sand layer that keeps the planted substrate down. So I will take my time and I will use a plastic cup to fill it up just until the water is right above the whole layer of substrate. And then I'll actually use the hose from my siphon to siphon clean water into it. I'll show you how I do that in a bit, you'll see it. So right now the mission is just to fill the tank with water. At this point, I just wanted to show you how I finish off filling the rest of the tank. I actually do this now whenever I am performing water changes on my tank and I'm ready to put the clean water in. So I filled that pot with clean water and I basically reversed the siphon. So I took everything off my siphon. I'm just using the hose, and I had to put it on my legs like that because in order for the water to flow into the tank, you have to get the pot of water higher than the actual level of the water of the tank itself. So that worked really well. It took me a couple times to get a good suction. Twice I have gotten water in my mouth, and I did end up swallowing a little bit of water, but it's okay because it's clean water. It's not old, dirty old fish water. But yeah, I have gotten water into my mouth twice doing that, but it is easy. It makes things a whole lot better. There, I was just cleaning the glass. I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is to clean the glass. It really affects the look of your tank. And then here, I just plugged up the sponge filter just to get it going. It was a bit of a squeeze because everything was behind my bed. I have only one outlet behind my bed, and everything for that tank has to go back there. So after that, I added Easy Green fertilizer by Aquarium Co-op. It is my current favorite. And then I added a cap full of the API bacteria starter. I've heard some people say it doesn't do much and other people say it's all right. I use it along with other things like adding snails in the tank because, you know, they make poop and then that helps with the ammonia and it helps start the tank. So I just like to use it, and I have a bottle of it anyway, so why not? After that, everything was set up. It was all done and I'm absolutely loving how it looks. It has now been 6 days, so almost a week since I last filmed, and look how nice and clear the tank is. It really cleared up. I haven't done a water change or anything because if you're doing a fishless cycle, it's best to just top it off when necessary. You don't really need to change the water. It's actually ideal to leave the water because changing out a lot of it throughout the cycle period can actually make the cycle take longer. So down here I have tested it, and I'm actually kind of interested because both the ammonia and nitrite are reading at 0, but my nitrates are actually around probably 5 to 10 ppm. So there are nitrates, but no nitrites or ammonia, which is usually something you would see in a cycle tank. I'm still gonna let it keep going for several more weeks, and then I'll keep testing it every week to just see if anything changes. The odd thing is this is usually what a cycle tank does. So, you know, it takes the ammonia and the nitrites, and then the colony of beneficial bacteria that have accumulated, they'll turn that into nitrates, which is why you would see higher nitrates, but that's always okay because the plants will usually feed on it and filter it out. I don't know. I'm kind of interested in what the test will look like in another week. So I'll test it in another week and we will see how it does, but I'm really loving it. And I'm not sure if I boiled the wood long enough because after a week it is slightly tinted. I can see that some tannins have come out, but that's okay. It's not terrible. And like I said, there's really no need right now to actually change it. In the last
6 days. The plants have been doing really well. This one in particular has been growing new leaves. We have this one, and this one, and they look really good. But it seems like every other leaf is melting pretty severely, which is okay. I kind of expected that. Everything else seems to be doing really well though. The Bucephalandra is doing well. The snails are doing well. It's looking really good. The Anubis is doing really well. Everything's looking really, really good. So I will update you again in a little bit and we'll check and see what the test reads in about another week. I have been thinking a little bit about what I actually want to do when I get a betta, like what kind of betta I want. And I think I've said this before, but I'm definitely going to get mine from my local Pet Supplies Plus. They're really good. They take care of their bettas. They have a pretty quick turnaround, so bettas don't stay there very long. The only thing is, I never know what's actually going to be there. So I could go in with the general idea of what I want, but they may not even have a betta that color. However, I have been thinking a red betta will look really cool in this tank. Now, I don't know if they're gonna have one like that, and of course when I go in, who knows which betta I'll fall in love with, and if I fall in love with the betta, I'm just gonna get it no matter what color it is. But I think a red one would just totally pop in this tank, and I think it would look really nice. So I would love to know your thoughts. Do you think I should get a red betta, or do you think another color would be nice? Obviously, I don't know what they're gonna have, but I think it's pretty exciting. I won't be getting the betta in this video actually, but shortly after this is posted, or even probably the next video I post after this one, should all go well and smoothly, the next one I post will be me getting my betta, so we'll see what happens. Let's see how the test is looking next week. So it would be next Friday, because today's Friday. All right, here we are at week 2. It has now been 2 weeks since I set up my tank. I've been waiting all week to see the test results. You might notice that I did add something. I had a nice Monstera plant that wasn't doing too well, so I just cut off some of the nicest pieces and stuck it in here. I'm still deciding whether or not I like it. I don't know if it's maybe too much, and it would be better if I just didn't have anything there. But for now, I'm just leaving them there and letting them propagate. It does seem like the water has some more tannins in it now, and that's understandable. I mean, I haven't changed the water in 2 weeks. You're probably interested to see what the test results are like, so here we go. You may notice something has changed. We have a lot more nitrates than we did last week, but interestingly enough, we also still have no ammonia and no nitrite. It seems like it's cycled already, which usually I let a tank go for a month, maybe a little bit more, but honestly, this seems to signify that the tank is now cycled. I noticed that there has been a pretty big uptick in the amount of copepods that have been on the glass. Now, if you don't know what those are just little white critters, and you really can't see them very well. I'm trying to see if I can get some angle, if perhaps you can see them, but they're very small and they're white and they crawl all over the glass, all of those. And that is covering the glass, and they're just little copepods. When you first set up your tank, you're going to have a lot of those while the tank is cycling, but eventually it's just going to die down and they're mostly going to be in the substrate and everything. It's completely normal, a completely natural part of the tank cycle. So I honestly think that this tank is cycled. So what I'm gonna do, since I'm cleaning Edwin's tank for the week, I'm going to go ahead and just do a partial water change. Not really for a water change sake, but more to remove some of the debris. It's just gotten kind of gross looking. I won't worry too much about cleaning it. It also needs a bit of a top off. That's about all I'm going to do for this week. I am going to skip to week 3. We're going to do one more check of the tank, and then we're definitely going to make sure that it's cycled, but I think next week we're going to get the same exact results, which is exciting. One other thing I wanted to point out, a few things have come out of place. Like this plant has floated up, parts of it have died, which is understandable. Usually some plants are going to go through some kind of melting as you set up the tank. There is a lot of waste and debris, which is to be expected because my tank has been set up for 2 weeks now. The heater that I put in there, I got a heater that has got a little crooked, so I will fix that as well. And it also seems to me like maybe that rock has shifted right there. I had it leaning up against the wood, keeping it from tipping back. I think it shifted, but other than that, everything's looking really, really good. I'm very happy with how everything is turning out. So let's skip to next week and make sure that this tank is cycled. cycled because I think it is. All right, it is week 3 and I can now confidently say that the tank is now cycled. As you can see, it's almost the same as last week, except we don't have as many nitrates as we did, so it's not quite as dark. It's probably hovering around the 10 to 20 ppm mark, which is perfect. This tank is cycled, finally. And honestly, it didn't take as long as I thought it would. It only took 1 or 2 weeks. I mean, I waited 3 weeks to make sure, but really it was probably cycled within the first 2, which surprised me, but I'm very, very happy. So today I'm just going to clean it. I'm going to do another water change, siphon out some of the stuff. I did add 2 little shrimp from my other tank to this tank because I love shrimp and I would love to have them in this tank as well. They're doing well, they acclimated well, and they've been in there for a few days now, so all is good. I'm still deciding on whether or not I want these in the tank, those plant cuttings. I don't know if it makes it feel too crowded or if it adds to the natural look. I'm not sure yet, but I love how this tank turned out. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that the entire aquascaping process of this tank, oh look, there's a shrimp. I hope this entire process inspired you or at least provided you with some entertainment. Go to the comments and tell me what you think. If you have any suggestions, any ideas, or any feedback, I would absolutely love to hear it. I will be getting a Betta fish soon, so stay tuned for that. I don't know exactly when. It may be the video posted after this, or it may be 1 or 2 videos after this one. I'm not quite sure yet. Before you go, don't forget to check the description because I have a lot of fun links, some links to different socials, and also to a free guide that you can grab right away. So thank you for tagging along, friend. God bless you, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Hello friend, and welcome or welcome back. Today is going to be so much fun because I'm creating my dream 7-gallon cube tank. And I'm starting with this light from Aqua. They were so kind to send me this, so thank you so much, Aqua. They actually sent me one for the tank that Walter is currently in, my 5-gallon tall one. And I've been using it for a while, so I know that this is now my new favorite light. I believe that they are actually a sister brand to Higer, which was the brand of my previous aquarium light, which was my favorite, but this is my new favorite. And honestly, they both function about the same, but this one I love because it's built like a book light. It has a clip, you can clip it anywhere on the back, and it has a bendable neck. So when you want to get your hands into the tank, maybe you're cleaning it, maybe you're fixing the scape, you don't have to shift the light. And this was the problem I was having with my previous light. I had to shift it or just take it off. But this one, I don't have to do that at all. It's completely hands-free. I love this light. I'm a big, big fan. So I went ahead and mounted that, and I actually discovered that it is movable. You can move, you saw me do that right there. I don't know what name to give it, but anyway, you can move it side to side. And the other one was so tight on mine that I didn't know I could do that because I tried, but I couldn't. So I just shifted that over. The one thing you want to be careful about is the 2 little screws that you have on back to secure it to the glass are metal. So if you're not careful, you could scratch the glass of your tank. So just be careful with that. Make sure that you go in mindfully as you're screwing it on. You could also honestly just put a little piece of felt, if you had it, in between the 2 screws in the glass in the back. You can't really see it, but they're there, and if you get the light, you'll understand. But this is my favorite light, so I do highly recommend it. Once I had the light set up, I actually wrapped the cord around it because there's really not a great place to mount it. So this is my favorite way to wrap the cord around to make it a little bit more invisible. Just bring it around the back because I will have a heater and filter back there, which will then hide it. Now we're getting into the fun part, the substrate. I've had this substrate sitting around for years. Honestly, this was the substrate for my first tank, that Top Fin Aquarium gravel, and then I went ahead and I bought some of the Fluval planted stratum, And I also bought some really fine gravel to cap the stratum with. I knew that I wanted to create a natural slope in the tank, and when I got in the fluval stratum and the gravel, the fine gravel, I knew that I didn't have enough to build it up. And since I had this top fin gravel sitting around for literally close to 10 years, I knew that I could use that. So I went ahead and used it, and now it's not sitting around in a desk drawer waiting to be used. It was perfect for this tank, so I built the slope. Once I had the slope built, I went on and added the fluval stratum. One thing I recently discovered with this is as I rinsed it, these are actually just little balls of formed, I don't know, dirt, clay, whatever, nutrients. You really can't rinse this. I tried, and honestly, you would be wasting your time. I used to think you could rinse it, but what happens is if those little pellets meet with any resistance, they will crush and then release even more dirt and powder. So pretty much you rinsing it, it's not going to do anything, so just dump it in. It's very messy, it's very dirty, but if you're going to cap it, it keeps a lot of that stuff from rising up into the water once you fill it. And I actually had a really good experience with it overall. This is the second time I've used the fluval stratum. I used it in my 5-gallon tank with Walter, and I really love it. The plants love it. But this time I wanted to cap it because it was really dark and I wanted to lighten up the tank. So I started by sprinkling this fine gravel over the top. I was a little bit concerned because if you notice, as it gets wet, it looks really dark, but it turns out okay in the end. It didn't discolor it or anything, so I was really happy. So I just really worked with that back and forth, trying to get a pretty good thick layer of fine gravel on the top. I keep wanting to say sand, but it's really not sand. I didn't want straight up sand, but I wanted something very, very close, so I ended up getting that. Now look at those layers. Oh my goodness, I am such a fan of the layers. This is the first time that I am doing this. I have never had 3-layered substrate before, but I love it. I love it. Now after this, I went ahead and started laying out the hardscape. So I got my dragonstone. It's dragonstone. I keep wanting to say lava rock, but this is dragonstone. I got it from someone on Etsy. It was super reasonable. I used all of the pieces that I received in the mail, and it was perfect for the scape. What I had in mind was a bit of a sloping kind of rock wall that I was then going to work some of the wood that I bought around it, and I wanted it to go down gradually with the slope. So really putting the hardscape in your tank is probably the most time consuming because you really want to get it right so that you don't have to keep moving it around, and you want it to look perfect. So here's what I had so far. Now I actually ended up shifting it forward just a little bit because once I put the wood in, I didn't have enough space for the heater and filter back there. So I do shift it forward. You'll see that in the video. What I'm doing here is showing you that I like to keep about 3 fingers width of space in between each side of the glass, because when I'm cleaning the tank, I want to have a clear shot for my little metallic glass scraper, and if I put the hardscape right up against the glass, it's super hard, stuff starts shifting. So this is something new that I decided to do, and I can tell you right now, because I've already cleaned the glass a couple times, it is so much easier to give yourself some space. Again, you're going to see it kind of right up on the glass, but I end up shifting it forward because it just wasn't working. I realized I did not give myself enough space for the heater and the sponge filter, so I end up doing that, but I kept the overall shape that I'm creating here. here is the final hardscape setup. Shifted things forward, worked in the wood behind the rocks, and I put the sponge filter and heater in the back, and honestly, I'm a big fan already. I was super thrilled. I can confidently say that this is my best scape yet. Super excited. Now is the moment of truth. Time to fill it all up with water. This was really time consuming because I took it bit by bit. I was not about to destroy everything I had worked so hard to create for at least an hour. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it did take me quite a long time to fix everything just right. The front half is lower than the back half, so if you notice, a cloud of dust from the fluval stratum is forming there. I don't really know how, but somehow a lot of the dust just kind of seeped up through the sand, and I was a little bit concerned, but I didn't let it stop me, so I kept going. It seemed like the dust actually kept to the front, and you can see at this moment I was just looking down, really hoping that this wasn't going to mess anything up, but I knew that eventually it would settle, so I went ahead and I finished filling it up so that I could allow it to go ahead and start working, cycling, and settling so that we could see what I was really working with here. After a few minutes, things started to settle, and if you look to the bottom, now there is a fine layer of dust, brown dust on the bottom. I was a little bit scared because I was afraid it might not come up, but I decided to remain positive, and I figured that after I let it settle, I would go over it with the siphon to see if I could clean it up any. Here's the tank right now. I am really proud of it. I really am in love with this tank. I love the light, I love the shape, rimless, just that it's a cube. The water is still cloudy, just a tiny bit. And that could either be from beneficial bacteria bloom, maybe, because I did add API quick start and it has a tendency to do that. It could also be just from the sand. I'm contemplating whether or not I should do a water change, because if you see all this brown on the sand, that's dirt and stuff that actually came up from the planted substrate I have beneath the sand, and I do want to try to siphon that up. I think I should be able to, because if you notice in the back how clean that looks, that's how it's supposed to look the whole way, and it just doesn't, which honestly, it's not bad. If I can't, for some odd reason, if I can't siphon it up, I won't be too mad, but I would like to remove it so that it just feels brighter and cleaner. Can I just say I am in love with this natural slope? It's kind of hard to tell on camera, honestly. It's more effective in person. It just is. On camera, it doesn't look as big, but it's actually pretty dramatic, and you can tell from the side. I love that I decided to use my old rocks to boost the substrate that I had, because I was right. I did not have enough to create the dramatic slope that I was hoping for and that I did accomplish with that. So I have had that stuff sitting around since I was honestly probably 12, and I'm not even kidding you. It was one of the first substrates. Honestly, it was probably the first substrate I ever bought. Now that I think about it, I probably had it since I was 12 or 13 anyway, so I used little bits here and there, but I kind of like getting to use it in this. I'm a big fan of it, and I can't wait to see what it looks like playing it up. I got a lot of different and various neat plants. I've also been talking to a friend, and she may send me a couple other cool ones that I don't have in my area. I've been thinking about what I want to do up here because it's just too empty. I think I'm going to take some plant cuttings and arrange it nicely up at the top here. Maybe even cluster some around the light to kind of hide it, make it look a little more natural. Something of the sort. I've been toying with the idea of buying one of those little inverted jar Betta lookouts off of Etsy, because they are super duper cool, but I haven't quite decided whether or not I'm going to do that. I am going to let this tank cycle for a month or so I have plenty of time to think on it. But right now, I love how it looks. I really cannot wait to see it with the plants.
So I will go ahead and cut to the part when the plants arrive and we'll do a little unboxing. Well, that was easy. I was not expecting it to be that easy, but I think it's safe to say I have found my new favorite substrate. Okay, the plants came in. It's pretty late in the evening, so I apologize if the lighting is a little bit wonky, but I tried my best to even it out. They arrived. I didn't order that many plants, but as you can see, the box is pretty big, so I imagine there's been a fair amount of room left in it. I'm just gonna go ahead and get it opened up. Gonna go out of frame just for a second so I can slice it open. All right, let's see what's in there. I'm pretty excited because most of these plants I have never seen in person. A bunch of these are plants, well, actually all of them I think are plants I haven't had before, which was kind of the whole point. I paid a little bit more, well, I paid quite a bit more than I've ever paid for plants. It was still reasonable, but it was just more than I've paid before, so I wanted to obviously get plants I haven't had. But I'm gonna look for the snails first. I see plants. I'm looking for the snails. Oh, there they are. Oh my goodness. Whoa. They're kind of smaller than I thought they'd be, but this one is gorgeous. Just wait until I take it out. There are a few more plants in here. I'm gonna get everything out and then we'll take a look at those snails. So here's everything. I see the Anubis that I got right away. That's a pretty beefy one. I like that. Okay, I'm going to get the snails out. Hopefully they'll be all right. They look pretty good. They're tinier than I thought they'd be, but I know they'll grow eventually. But I caught a glimpse of this little one right here. I'm a little concerned with the water. I hope they're okay. I'm just trying to get them out of the frame. This one is beautiful. Oh my goodness. I hope they're okay. They literally came the next day after it was shipped, so I think they'll be all right. I hope oh no. This snail may be dead, y'all. Oh no, and he was literally the most beautiful one. Look at him. Hold on, I gotta go get like toilet paper or something. Yeah, I was a little bit concerned when I saw the water in the package. I'm pretty sure that guy's dead, which is absolutely devastating because he was my favorite looking one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's gone, y'all. Ugh, that makes me sick. I'm gonna have to message the seller. I hope this other dude's alive. I think he's okay. I see his foot. So I think he's okay. Okay, I've switched up here because for some reason the lighting was really funky down there. But I think that the biggest one I got is okay. He's really pretty. It's hard to see, but he has stripes, see, all around his body. I see his little foot right there, so I do believe he's alive. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick him into the tank just so I can kind of watch him get in there and see him come out. I think he'll be all right. I'm pretty sure he's alive. He doesn't look dead, so I think we're good. He's resting down there. See him? There he is. So we'll see if he comes out. He should though. I'm gonna have to message that seller that the one died. Oh my goodness. And he's gorgeous too, but he was small. I'm thinking maybe he didn't make it because he was small. I don't know, but let's get into the plants because I think the plants are going to be great. The first one is I think the Anubis. Yeah, the first one's the Anubis.
Ooh, this dude's big. Okay. Definitely a neat plant. Look at this. Pretty big. I like it. I think these might be new leaves. Maybe. It's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like it's also sprouting a new little root right there. So that's a good sign. This guy looks pretty good. Has some debris from other leaves on him, but I think that that one is good. I'm hoping for no more casualties. Hoping for no more casualties. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Which is going to need a bit of a trim. Some of the leaves are not looking too hot, but I think it'll make a pretty good comeback. I think it's all right. It just needs, it needs a little bit of help. I actually got 2 of these. So that's one, and this is the other one. This one has a couple ripped leaves and quite a few yellow leaves. I wonder if this is why they were on sale. This is a new seller I was trying, and for the most part the plant looks okay, but it's not exactly what I was thinking it would be. Because from the pictures it looked super healthy. I'm wondering if maybe this is why they were on sale, maybe. Which I still paid a fair amount for them, so I'm hoping the rest of the plants are okay. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous at this point. I'll put the name of it up there because I, for the life of me, can't remember. It looks pretty good, healthy roots, just quite a few dead leaves, not too many. I think this is supposed to be purple, looks like. But obviously this one's gonna have to come off. Just have to do a little bit of pruning, and this is the same plant. Slightly different. Looks pretty good, I like it. These aren't dying leaves from what I gather. These are how it's supposed to look, I think. So that plant looks all right. Now on to the next bag. Let's get it opened up and see what we have. Okay, everything is all thrown together in this bag. Let's see. So here's the Bucephalandra that I bought. I got a fair amount of it, so I'm not upset. I got quite a bit actually. I bought these to put in the rocks that I have, so I'm gonna cut them up and put them in the rocks. I think they'll do better once they're in my tank. Some of them look a little bit rough, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with it. I would like to know though, let me know in the comments, was this worth $13? Because it was on sale. I think it was originally $17. Would you say this is worth $13? Let me know in the comments, I'm just curious. We have the Cryptocoryne. I do actually remember this plant. At least I remember this one. A crypt and a, it's a little bit rough, but I think it's okay. And it actually comes on a rock. Is it attached to a rock? I think it's attached to a rock. This is supposed to be a dwarf lotus or something of some kind, but it was thrown all together. So she looks a little beat up, probably come back, but she looking a little bit rough. So I'm gonna probably have to go clean her off. I'm gonna go do that. This is the last plant of the plant haul, and I may need to message the person because I paid quite a bit, including shipping for these. And also the snail has not come out yet, so that's a little bit concerning. I will be right back. Okay, so it's probably about an hour-ish later. The adventure continues. So here's kind of a short little story of what happened. Who knew that this little tank rescaping video would have a little bit of an interesting side to it? But anyway, a little bit of plant drama, maybe, if you will. So I called the guy that I bought them from, and he told me essentially that these two turned like this in shipping and that it's totally normal. So what I need to do is cut them off, put them in the water, and they'll be okay. And then he told me that since the one snail is dead, he will refund me, but I should wait a few days to see if that snail comes out, because he said he probably will. So then he could refund me the snail money or send me new ones, should I need that. With the plants, basically, we're finished with that. He said they're all okay, they'll be all right. I probably won't plant them tonight. I'm just going to clean them all off, prune off the dead leaves and just kind of float them in the water. So my biggest concern was this one, which I believe is a lily. It was literally, you saw it, it was thrown into a bag of other plants with this. I called a friend of mine. She also has tanks, plants, she ships and does different things. She's actually sending me floating plants for this tank, by the way, so we will stay tuned for that. I'll be getting those in a couple of days. But basically, I called her after I called the guy, told her what happened. She looked at the plants, she said she thinks they'll be okay, so I think we're good with the plants. I'm actually pretty excited about these. So we're gonna end the night because it is late. I'm pretty tired. I'm gonna go clean up these plants. We'll see what happens with that snail in the morning. I'm going to kind of dispose of the other stuff, and I will see in the morning when we get these planted. Good morning, friend. It is now day 3. It is 7 something in the morning, I think. And I've been thinking on last night. Today I'm going to get to planning my tank, so don't worry about that. But I wanted to take a minute to kind of talk about last night because I've really been thinking a lot about it. I was contemplating whether or not I should even share who I bought the plants from, because I do not want to come across as that person who, if they're minorly inconvenienced, they then just go and just slander somebody's name. You probably know a few people like that. I've seen a lot of instances like that online. Those people are unfair, and they usually don't even reach out to the person to try to straighten things out. So I don't want to come across as that kind of person, but I also don't want to put somebody else in the place of having the same experience that I did, because I was talking to a friend and she had a previous experience with him and it was not great either. So I was kind of going back and forth, should I share who I bought the plants from? And finally I've decided to do it. And I'm just gonna kind of explain what actually happened a little bit more in depth because I really don't think I did last night. I won't take a whole lot of time. You can feel free to skip for this section if you want, but I thought it could create an interesting conversation piece as well as maybe prevent you from having this kind of experience yourself, hopefully. So all in all, the plants are okay. So I bought these plants from Chi-Chi's Aquatic Dreams. That is the website, the brand. I talked to the owner himself. From what I gather, he's the only one actually running this. But the website looked great. I actually happened across it on Facebook. I just happened to see a post and then I saw he had plants and I thought, oh cool, so I checked out his website. Website looks incredible, by the way. I really, really loved the website. It looked really good, really professional, and there were a few reviews and they were positive. So I felt pretty confident in the decision I was making. I was excited because he actually had all the ones that I was wanting. They were more rare. I could not find them in person. I could not find them in a pet store. So I was expecting to pay a little bit more, but they were on sale. So they were actually pet store prices. Most of them, a few were more expensive. So I kind of went to the website, talked back and forth a little bit on Facebook, just kind of asking about plant recommendations. Didn't talk a whole lot, but it seemed pretty friendly and pretty nice. So I ended up buying a bunch of plants. Well, not a bunch. I bought several, a good amount. And I also want to share what I paid for these. I was struggling with that a little bit too because I don't want to come across as, I don't know, you know, sometimes people flex how much they spend on stuff. I'm not that kind of person, but I want to let you know because it kind of affects this whole situation. So plus shipping and tax, I ended up paying $80 for these plants. Now, when you break it down, I really only paid $62 for the plants, but the shipping and the tax was $18. So in total, I paid $80 for these plants. They did come next day, so they were packed and then they were shipped, and they arrived here a day after I got the shipped notification. And that's only because he lives in the same state as I do and it was sent UPS second day. So I feel like if I had lived in another state, it's highly possible that they would have been in the mail a few more days, and at that point, I don't know what would have happened with the plants, so I'm thankful they didn't spend any more time in the mail. However, yes, I spent $80 total on these plants. And then yesterday, as you saw, I was unboxing them. I had really high hopes because I thought, you know, with how the website looked and with the amount of money that I would be paying, I expected to have a good experience. I unboxed everything. One snail was dead, the other one I'm not sure. The plants, a bunch of the biggest leaves of these plants were totally dead, broken, yellow, black. I had to take them off because obviously it would affect the plant, and I don't, they're dead anyway, they're dying. Can't bring them back. I was a little bit concerned about the plants, but I do know that sometimes that happens, and then they will, they'll grow back. So I'm believing that these plants are going to grow back, and they're going to be healthy, and they're going to be fine. But when I messaged him with my concerns, I only sent a couple messages here because he asked me to call and talk to him personally. So I don't have very many actual chat messages, but the ones I do have are here. And at first he came across as a little bit rude, and I'm just kind of gonna leave that up to you to decide, but it seemed just a little bit rude to me. So when I originally messaged, I just said, hey, I got the package, there are a few concerns, I'm afraid. And then he said, what are the concerns? And I said, I know one snail is dead, and I think the second one is too. The plants were thrown in together, and there was a fair amount of damaged leaves. And in the bag that they were wrapped, there's a lot of yellow leaves. And I wasn't getting really defensive, but I will be honest, I was a little bit nervous because I was remembering my friend's experience she told me she had previously, but I was still, I was still being nice, being considerate. Anytime you're dealing with something, a situation like this, if you order something and it's not what it was advertised, or you have some concerns, always make sure you're considerate. So I made sure I did that. I said, this guy isn't coming out. I sent a picture of snails, sent a picture of some of the plants and the stuff. And then he sent this. Are you new to plants and shipping? Which seemed incredibly rude to me. I'm not going to lie. It just seemed really rude. So then I said, I never complain about packaging, but I paid $80. I said, can we figure out a solution? I never really asked for a full refund. I just would like a civil resolution to this. And then he said, please call me. Gave me the number. So I called him and we had a conversation. He sounded nice enough. I mean, he wasn't yelling, he wasn't being rude, he wasn't using explicatives, but I can kind of read in between the lines, like I said, and from what I gathered, because I just kind of let him know my concerns, and he basically, after I mentioned the plants and how they looked, he basically started talking about some calls he's gotten before, like where people were yelling at him, and I told him, I said, oh yeah, I completely understand. I've had some people be pretty rude to me before because I'm not new to the business world. I've had some clients because I do some different things. And then he said there was this lady, she messaged me about her plants, and then she was calling me and she was yelling at me, and then a week later she called me and told me that I was right and she was wrong and the plants are okay and they're growing. Which on the surface, if you don't think about it too much, okay, you're telling me this experience with a woman, but to me this is what it sounded like when he said that. It sounded to me like he was saying, I'm the expert, I've been in plants for a long time. I know you don't. You're probably a beginner and you don't know that these leaves are supposed to yellow in the mail. He said that they weren't like this, but that they turned into this a day in the mail, which could be true. I'm not calling him a liar or anything. But I did talk to a plant friend who has some experience in this, and she's kind of skeptical as to whether or not they were like this before shipping. But either way, I talked to him, and it seemed to me like, as far as the plants are concerned, there's no hope of a refund, nothing. So really, I'm just praying that they make a full comeback and that they're going to be okay and they're going to grow well in my tank. As far as the snails, he said, wait about 4 days and then contact me to see if the snail comes out of a shell. But I do feel like a few things should have been done differently, so I would be interested to know what you think. I did not expect this to happen at all, but the interesting thing with Escape is you never know what's gonna happen. Also, I wanted to share something. I moved the camera. I also wanted to share something I made yesterday because I have never actually had sand or really fine gravel in a tank before. And so I heard that you want to get these little scrapers, you want to buy the scrapers just to kind of straighten out the sand because it can get displaced really easily and then you need to smooth it back out. But I didn't really want to buy one, so I had bought something packaging that came with this really thick plastic. You know, most like doll packages, packages of toys, you know, that thick plastic that comes in the box so you can see through to whatever's in there. I had some laying around. It's just that plastic, you know. Let me cut this in a rectangle shape so I can smooth the sand out with it. So I can smooth it like this or like this, just depending on the space I have in between, you know, in my tank. It works so well. It works so well. Do this. If you don't want to buy the scraper, you can cut up some plastic from packages you probably have laying around anyway, and it totally works. So there's that. I did want to share that with you. And that's pretty much it for the whole situation. I just kind of wanted to hop on here and talk a little bit about it. We're going to go ahead and get into the actual planting of the plants in a little bit. Everything looks pretty good, what I have anyway, after taking all the dead leaves off. I do hope that they make a good transition, because from what I understand, most of them were grown above water, which is immersed, and they were not grown below water. So I hope they make the transition all right. There may be less melting. I have heard that plants that are grown immersed actually don't melt as much, because instead of having to get used to different water parameters, they just have to get used to living underneath the water instead of above. So I believe there is actually less melting involved with that transition, so I'm hoping that that is the case. And we'll just see. I really do love how the tank is coming together. I'm excited. I'm learning a lot about layered substrate. This is super cool and really fun and a very interesting experience. So let's go ahead and get the plants settled in the tank, and then in a day or two I'll be getting my floating plants, and then I think the tank will be mostly complete. Alright, now it is time to get everything planted up, and honestly this is the more tedious part of aquascaping, especially when you have planted substrate, because I'm going to have to dig down through the cap layer to get the roots buried in the substrate. It wasn't super hard, but I did have to be very careful because I didn't want to kick anything up or disrupt anything and make the water all muddy all over again, because then I couldn't see. And the water did get a little bit cloudy. It was still kind of cloudy because I added some of that API quick start. I figured that would help the cycle. I'm not adding fish early, but I just have a bottle of it on hand. I think somebody gifted it to me and it seems to work all right, so I just put a little bit in there. I imagine that's why the water was kind of cloudy. That and the fact that I was kicking dust up. With the Nubus you see here, I actually decided to secure it with some fishing wire to one of the pieces of wood that kind of stuck out. It actually resembled a tree a little bit, so I thought that was really neat. You'll see it more when I just show you an overview of the tank, but I thought that was cool. And then I just kept on planting, Some of the plants, like the bucephalandra, didn't need its roots to be planted. I just lodged it into the rocks, but other things like this crypt needed it. And then of course I was constantly bumping other plants I had planted. Some of them came up, but most of them stayed down once I had them firmly planted. Here it is all done and scaped up. It doesn't look fantastic because it's murky. I stirred up a lot of stuff when I was planting it, so I'll give it about a day or so to clear up, and then I will see you back here because it's just not clear enough to display how actually gorgeous it is. I'm super excited. I ended up planting a bunch of just the clumps of bucephalandra in these little crevices because I heard someone say that dragonstone can be dangerous to a betta if they just swim in around there because there are some sharp edges. So I used it to cushion all of that, to fill in the cracks and crevices. So I think it's going to be really betta friendly and also absolutely gorgeous. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty and I love how it turned out. But we'll wait for it to clear and then we'll take another little look. Day 4 or 5, I don't know, I think I've lost track. Anyway, I got my floating plants in and I'm so excited, but before I show you which ones I got, I want to give a little shout out to the woman I actually got them from. She's super sweet, and I wanted to show the packaging because it was so good, but I decided I wanted to go ahead and take it out because they needed to start spreading out and getting rehydrated. Even though they were wrapped up really well in paper towels, the leaves were a little more curled than they are now, even though they haven't fully come out. But they're doing better, so I had to just kind of rinse them. I didn't think you would want to watch all that, so basically what I did is I took them out, rinsed them off to prevent any duckweed from being introduced, and then I just floated them for a couple hours. But I wanted to show you this packaging because it is so cute. Not only did she send it in an adorable box, but she sent me all these stickers. And look at this, Fish Make Life Betta, which is literally my Instagram handle. So I absolutely love this. She sent me a couple others. Look how cute they are. There's even a Betta Fish. I love it. And here is her business card. I actually wanted to show you this because she's so awesome. So I don't know if you could screenshot and scan this. I think you can scan it in your actual camera roll, but I think you can. Check out her Etsy and her Facebook. She is the sweetest, and she has absolutely gorgeous floating plants at really reasonable prices. And she did tell me that she's planning on eventually selling other plants, not just floating plants. So make sure you follow her Etsy because this is the best experience I've had by far. So here are the bags that they came in, and I just kept them to show you the types of plants I got because I'm not super great with names yet. So I got the Salvinia minima, the dwarf water lettuce, I got the Salvinia I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. I'm just going to embarrass myself. And then I got some red root floaters. So let's take a little bit of a close-up look because this is my first time I've ever had most of these, especially the Salvinia. It was actually always a big wish list plant, but I just could never find anyone who had quality plants, and now I know someone. So if you've been wanting some of these, make sure you get yourself hooked up with some of them. But let's take a close-up look. Look at how utterly stunning these plants are. These are the red root floaters. I got a little bit of dwarf water lettuce. I didn't get a ton because I was mainly interested in these. I mean, look at how much I got. It's almost covering half of the surface of this tank, and that's still a lot for me, so I may stick some in Walter's tank. I think he would really like it. He doesn't have anything right now to build a bubble nest in, and he always likes to build bubble nests, so I think he'd like to have some of this in his tank. But look at how stinking cool these are. And here's a view of the roots. Super awesome. They need to get acclimated and used to the tank, but I think they're really going to flourish. These two, both of the Salvinia plants, are very, very hardy. They did really well in the mail, even though it was delayed several days, which was not the seller's fault. There's honestly no telling why it was late. The mailing system is really weird sometimes, but they did quite well considering, and the Salvinia did the best. So I am absolutely thrilled. I think they're gorgeous. Also, there was one other thing I wanted to do today for the tank. I'm not going to do a whole lot because it's already late in the evening. I'm going to lose my sunlight, but I did want to show you that I bought some clear airline tubing off of Amazon. I know I have the black here, but I was just looking at it. I was kind of looking at it, and I thought, even though I'm going to have plants that are eventually going to grow and hide this, I don't like this. And I realized that they actually sell clear airline tubing. So this is going to cut a lot of that kind of dark cord cable. I know I have the dark cable for the two lights. Well, for the light and the heater, and I can't do anything about that, but I can do something about this. But I also needed this for something else. I wanted to create some of my signature plant holders, which if you haven't checked out my tutorial on how to do that, you need to check it out because it's super, super simple and really, really nice. I have a couple houseplant cuttings that I'm wanting to put in the corner of this tank, and because I was out of airline tubing and because I didn't like the black, because again it was kind of dark, I decided to get some clear. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that black cord with the clear, and probably tomorrow or the next day I'm going to actually make the holders. I kind of wanted to film all of that in one fell swoop, but like I said, it's getting a little dark, so I'm just going to replace that and call it a day for this tank. It's currently cycling, it's looking really good, it's pretty clear, but there are some snail poops. He hasn't come out yet, but I put some of the other ram's horn and pond snails. I actually quite like them. So there's some snail poops in there, and I thought I would also scrub this for algae a little bit, do a little bit of a water change, but I'm going to do that off camera because you already saw me kind of change the water. So I'm just going to be doing the same exact thing you saw me do earlier, just change a little bit of the water, suck up some of the stuff off of the top of the sand. I'm going to replace that airline tubing really quickly. I figured since I'm already going, before I call it a day, I might as well just show you how to make one of the plant holders for the top of the tank. It's really simple. You're only going to need 3 pieces and it comes in the entire kit. So you're going to need a connector, a suction cup, and your desired length of tubing. And what you're going to do is hook it up to this side of the connector, get it kind of wiggled in there. It doesn't have to go all the way, it's not super important. And then what you need to do is just determine how big you want this loop. I want the loop to be about this big because it's going to hold several cuttings at once. And then just kind of mark where you want it. So I want to cut it off right here. Cut it, and that is it. Now all you have to do is connect the line. It's a little bit harder on this one, but you just muscle through it and you'll get it. And then just decide which side you want to attach this to. And just like that, you have the perfect plant holder. It just suctions inside the wall anywhere you choose, and then you stick your plant cuttings directly in there. As long as you have a decent amount of plant cuttings, maybe some pothos or something, they will not fall out at all. They will rest, and it's really in there. It's not going to flop around or anything, as you can see. It is perfect, and this is just my favorite way to do it. Super easy, super simple, and relatively invisible. And for pretty much the final step, I took some cuttings off of my houseplants and also a cutting that I had in the previous tank, and I just kind of shoved them into the little plant ring that I just made. It did take a little bit to get them all situated, but I wanted them to look perfect and give the tank a more natural look. I started doing this a couple years back to my tanks, and honestly I think it really elevates them. I don't usually go crazy because I know eventually they will grow and spread out, but I really enjoy it. And I took a longer clipping of some of my vining plants and I just wrapped them around the tank light. I don't know why my mic wasn't working for some reason, so I'm just gonna have to record it without it. But here is the finished product. Obviously, I'm going to let it cycle for close to a month. So I'm hoping, today it's the 31st of March, so I'm hoping that by the end of next month, I will be able to introduce the new member. But what I did today was just set up the little ring that I made with all of the plants. And I like to wind trailing plants up the lights, especially because once they get acclimated to being positioned in this manner, the leaves are going to fold out like this to face the light. So as the leaves are facing outwards, they're actually going to hide a lot of that rod right there, and it just makes it look more natural, feel more natural, and just kind of helps to hide the wires, anything I have going on behind the tank or above the tank. I really like it, and I love how it turned out. The plants are doing quite nicely. They're acclimating pretty well. I'm noticing more melting with this plant, but I think it's going to come around really nicely. The floating plants are blowing me away. Look at how utterly gorgeous these are. I'm going to leave a link to her Etsy store because, oh my goodness, you need to get yourself some. They're absolutely stunning. Oh my word. This is your sign to take the leap. If you want to get some pretty and unique floaters that you don't really find commonly in your pet store, this is it right here. Gorgeous. I'm really excited to be able to take photos and videos in this tank and just use it for my content. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love how it turned out, and wow, this whole setup video was a bit of an adventure, wasn't it? But I had so much fun. So if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for sticking with me. This was a lot of fun to create, and I loved having you come along for the ride. Believe it or not, just setting this up alone taught me a whole lot, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go. So this is the end of the video, friend. Thank you for tagging along with me. Let me know what your favorite part was in the comments if you have not already. And as always, if this is your first time to the channel, feel free to check out all the other content. I have a lot of helpful and inspirational content for Betta keepers such as yourself who just want to give your Betta a better life. Or a better life, but that might be kind of cheesy. Anyway, if you have not yet, head to the description and check out my free Facebook group, the Betta Fish Forum. Very shortly after this video comes out, I will also be announcing and finding the new member for this tank, so stay tuned. I'm super excited for that.
All right, what did you think? Was it as good as I told you it was going to be? I hope it was better than you thought it was going to be. I hope it exceeded all expectations. And with that, we are brought to the end of this tank setup course. By now, you should know exactly what you need to set up your tank. If you still feel a little fuzzy, go back through it, but get you a pen and a paper and just kind of set up a couple bullet points. It doesn't have to be super hard, but you can just put a couple bullet points and write out each step that you need. Or if it makes you feel better, you can go along with this course and after each module, just do what it says. Get your tank, then once you've got your tank, get your supplies, get it all set up. It's very simple and it's very straightforward. If you're setting up a tank for the first time, don't worry about it. Don't stress. Again, like I said, let it be fun. You are creating a masterpiece and things can always be changed. You can always change something around if you don't like it. And every tank I have ever made has gotten progressively better. I've learned the things I liked. I've learned the things I don't like. So don't let the thought of it stress you. You don't have to get it absolutely perfect. Nature is not absolutely perfect. So make it natural, make it fun, make it you. And I'm excited to see what you create, my friend. Head to the comments right now and let me know if you found this helpful. If there were any other points or any other things that really helped you set up a tank, if you have set up a tank before, stick those in the comments as well, because that would be very, very helpful to the rest of us who are creating tanks. I think it would be wonderful to keep on learning together. If you haven't yet joined the Betta Fish Forum, it is a great group, wonderful group, and very supportive. It's a great place to ask questions, to make new friends, and to be inspired. With that said, friend, if you found this helpful, and this is maybe the first video you've ever even seen on my channel, I highly suggest that you take a look around, and if you like what you see, hit subscribe, because here at Betta Days, we are all about helping you give your Betta the best life possible. Because who does not love a thriving fish? I think that's what we all want. I think that's what you want. And I think that is why you're here. So get out there and go make the best Betta tank ever. I believe in you. If you join the Betta Fish Forum, you tag me in that post once you've made that tank. I want to see it. God bless you, my friend. Have a fantastic day, night, week, or weekend, no matter where or when you're watching this. And I will see you soon.